Ruby holds a delicate flower up to the light, telling Lloyd that the freshness of ingredients determines the perfection of her alchemy. He mutters that she always says that. Ruby rejects his latest delivery outright, calling it below standard and refusing to accept any excuse. Lloyd clutches his head, and his mind drifts back to when he was 19, working a simple job at a drugstore. He recalls the ordeal behind the phantom flower, flirred Einsel a week spent hunting it down, 3 sleepless nights spent getting it home safely, only for Ruby to toss it straight into the trash. To the kingdom, Ruby is a celebrated genius, the inventor of countless magic tools and potions, adored by crowds as a kind, Jan-hearted alchemist. But to Lloyd, she is nothing short of a devil. Every product from her lab has to be flawless, no exceptions. Standing among scattered notes, Ruby declares his latest attempt at gathering materials a failure. Lloyd can only stare in disbelief. Alchemy is a partnership. The alchemist designs the recipe and does the compounding, while the assistant mage handles the material gathering. Ruby's success rate on recipes and compounding sits at a perfect by. Lloyd's success rate at finding materials, by contrast, is stuck at Baffinge's. Ruby snaps that because of him, the Atari name's reputation keeps sinking, and their current request won't be finished in time. She questions whether he even understands his job, while Lloyd apologizes quietly. The average assistant mage's material collection rate is Baffinge or higher, a number he can't come close to. Word spreads through the kingdom about how low Lloyd's rate is, and Ruby calls it embarrassing. She brands him useless, clumsy, and slow, telling him if he can afford to apologize, he should just do his job properly. She snaps at him to stop apologizing, saying it is grating on her nerves. Lloyd stands frozen, drenched in silence, branded a failure by society and worn down by Ruby's harassment. He remembers her scolding him even for breaking things out of frustration, calling it unsightly. Something inside him finally gives. He can't take any more of it, and in his mind, he decides to end things. He tells her plainly that he is done being her assistant mage and that he is leaving Eturi. Ruby freezes, caught completely off guard. He declares their partnership over as of today. Stunned, she still reminds him not to forget curry for dinner, as if nothing has changed. She dismisses his stubbornness, telling him he doesn't need to follow every formality if he wants to leave. He can just go. Desperate to escape the chaos of that household, Lloyd rushes to pack, muttering that anywhere would be better than staying. Before he can fully leave, she slips a letter into his bag, asking him to buy Earl Grey on his way, a small, mocking reminder of how tightly she still holds the reins. Sitting alone in the plaza as children play nearby, Lloyd finally lets his emotions settle, wondering quietly where his life goes from here. A dragon soars across the sky as Lloyd watches from below, only to catch himself still clutching the Earl Grey he'd just bought. He questions why he is even running this errand, realizing how deeply his years of servitude have been carved into him. The dragon spreads its massive wings wide, flying free, bound to no one and answering to nothing. Watching it, Lloyd decides to start his life over from scratch, wishing aloud that he could live as freely as that dragon, without anyone controlling him. Nearby children mock him for crying. A carriage rattles down the road, carrying him away from the city, past forests and rivers toward a distant town by the sea. As the wheels creak onward, Lloyd smiles at the thought that once this carriage arrives, a town where nobody knows him will be waiting. Inside the carriage, a boy named Mars sits pressed close beside an elf named Lyra, who teases him about how near his face is to hers. She admits his closeness makes her heart race, while Lloyd, seated across from them, tries to bury himself in his book as the two flirt. He admits privately that he admires her a little, though their bond feels more like servant and noble than lovers. He silently wishes they'd remember. He is still sitting right there. His mind drifts to the past, to how different Ruby used to be, as her voice suddenly calls out from behind, tracking him down. A memory surfaces, a younger Ruby scolding a crying boy for apologizing too much, telling him not to cry like that, even as he insists he is just hungry. She declares that she will become the best alchemist in the country, so she could live like nobility despite growing up in an orphanage. Overwhelmed, young Lloyd accepts the bread and agrees to become her assistant mage. The two of them pursued their separate roles with everything they had. Ignoring all else, and their dedication eventually earned Ruby the rare title of Alchemia Steel. But success changed her. Lloyd reflects that his own spirit had rotted away under the weight of it all, right as the carriage jolts to a sudden stop. A muttering stranger interrupts their conversation, startling the group, while the coachman's frightened screams cut through the air outside. Lara worries aloud about a monster, apologizing for blurting her thoughts as usual. Lloyd shrugs it off, saying he doesn't mind, and suggests they step out to see what is happening. Outside, an enormous worm-like monster rears up before them, dwarfing the carriage entirely. Mars vows to protect Lyra even at the cost of his life, while Lyra panics internally, admitting she is no match for a creature like this. Caught up in the moment, Lyra confesses her love for Mars. Lloyd, having faced a monster like this before, offers to help and share what he knows. Steadying himself, Lloyd explains that the monster's weak point is its head, and that a well-placed sword strike there should be enough to bring it down. With the massive worm bearing down, Lloyd tells Mars to hype himself up and find his resolve. But Mars hesitates, unsure how to even get close to something so huge. Lyra mutters that they really can't rely on an introvert like him. A staff glows to life, and a violent burst of magic erupts across the battlefield, sending Mars staggering back into Lyra's arms. The explosion tears through the air and Lloyd stands at the center of it, staff raised, having unleashed the spell himself. Mars stares at the aftermath, stunned that not just the head but the monster's entire body has been obliterated. Lloyd simply nods, unbothered. Lyra snaps that blowing up its whole body clearly wasn't the point, though. She thanks him anyway. Lloyd apologizes. Admitting his advice wasn't much help in the end, Lyra stares at him, baffled that he isn't even fazed by magic that powerful, demanding to know what kind of attack spell that even was. She insists his magic is clearly on a level that shouldn't be possible, calling it an outright cheat, while Lloyd asks innocently what is wrong with how he casts. Lyra introduces herself properly, apologizing for her earlier shock, and revealing that coincidentally she is a mage too. Mars bluntly remarks that age difference hardly matters since everyone grows old, eventually drawing a scolding from Lyra for saying something so blunt to an elder. Lyra suddenly drops to her knees, begging Lloyd to teach her magic, calling him master. While Lloyd protests that he isn't even that skilled a mage, stunned, he realizes that all this time he'd been told he was worthless, incompetent, nothing more than Ruby's childhood friend, and now someone is calling him master. Lyra pushes further, saying, a good person like her never lies, and declares she wants to become a mage capable of casting magic just like his. Mars teases her for mixing honorifics with insults, and Lyra bows apologetically for her rudeness earlier. Caught up in admiration, Lyra calls him sensei, even offering to become a guarantor for his debts, while Mars praises how amazing their new teacher is. Lloyd wonders privately whether they would still accept him if they knew who he truly was. Lyra insists he isn't giving himself enough credit as a teacher. She asks if he has heard of Ruby the alchemist, praising her as the greatest alchemist in the country, famous for her elixirs and magic dolls that carved her name into history. She adds that she despises Ruby's assistant mage, blaming him entirely for every failure Ruby has ever had, calling him the incompetent Lloyd with a pitiful Baffinger's material finding rate. Lloyd sits in silence as rain falls around him. Lyra asks what he thinks about that person. Through tears, he admits the truth plainly, that Lloyd, the one she hopes dies soon, is him. Lyra's face freezes in shock at the confession, pressing in close, while Mars and the others crowd around, and Lloyd tearfully insists it is fine to be hated. Lyra calls out to him, insisting Lloyd really is an amazing mage, and telling him to have more confidence in himself. Meanwhile, in the background, Mars explains to a passing stranger that Lloyd quit being an assistant mage, reflecting on how quickly he has made friends. Lloyd allows himself a small sense of luck. Mars and Lyra step forward, cheerfully declaring they'll help him settle in. He introduces himself properly as Lloyd Nelver. Mars strikes a dramatic pose, praising the name and joking that Lloyd should get a makeover, maybe a mohawk and a fur coat. Walking beneath an old stone archway, Lloyd decides it is time to head toward a fun, carefree routine done with people like Ruby, standing before the sprawling town with Mars and Lyra beside him. Lloyd looks out at the skyline and declares that his second life starts here. Now night falls over the peaceful rooftops of Minerva, or so it seems, before a sudden explosion tears through the calm. Massive shards of ice erupt from the ground, tearing through the street. As Lloyd stands at the center of the destruction, a striking woman descends before him, declaring that this is as far his evil can take him. Lloyd stares up in disbelief, realizing that, after barely escaping one nightmare, a new one has already begun on his very first day in Minerva. A few hours earlier, in the southern city of Minerva, Lloyd walked through the bustling streets, still unsettled by everything that had happened. Mars and Lyra asked if the two of them used to work as adventurers. A man traveling with a caravan explained that Minerva's economy leaned heavily on the adventuring business, and though the city thrived, it still sat 3 weeks away from the capital by carriage. Mars, chewing on a treat, declared that Lloyd seemed like the adventuring type. Lyra invited him to join them, but Lloyd hesitated, admitting he didn't see himself as someone suited for that life. Lyra suggested they think about his future over lunch. Lloyd admitted that his old role wasn't far from being an adventurer, since he used to work as an assistant mage. Lyra struck a confident pose beside her assistant Mars, declaring that the two of them would help Lloyd build his second life from scratch. Lyra brought up lunch again, joking that Lloyd finally had someone willing to consult with him about his future. Lloyd brushed off the exaggerated comparison, telling her she didn't need to phrase it that way. Lyra teased Lloyd for being so frugal with his meal, pointing out he'd stay stuck in his old mindset if he kept it up. Lloyd shot back, asking why she was being so cheap when she was busy showing off a trendy tapioca milk tea, rating it a perfect 10. Lyra slid a piece of paper toward him, asking him to write down the kind of job he wanted. When Lloyd admitted he had no idea, she offered a suggestion. Why not become a guide? Memories flickered through Lloyd's mind of the days he spent under Ruby's constant demands, being scolded no matter what he did. Overwhelmed, he admitted he couldn't think of anything he wanted for himself. Lyra reassured him it could be something he'd never considered before. Lloyd finally finished writing his second life wish list. No adventuring, since Ruby might find him. No dungeon exploring. For the same reason school felt pointless at this point. Reading his list, Lyra suggested a tool shop, since he could put his knowledge from material harvesting to good use. Lloyd lit up at the idea, calling it promising. Lloyd imagined himself running a shop, only to picture Ruby walking in to buy alchemy ingredients. In his imagination, she demanded he hand over materials for free, shaking him as she screamed at him to hurry up. Villagers thanked him for finishing the roof of their home, admiring his handiwork. Mars offered another idea. Maybe Lloyd could try being a carpenter instead. In another imagined scene, Ruby snapped at him, insisting he was nothing more than an assistant mage and belittling the quality of his repair, demanding he tear it all down and start over. Elsewhere, a memory surfaced of Lyra once asking him to become an adventurer alongside her, calling him sensei, with bright enthusiasm as she gripped his arm. Back in the present, Lyra admitted it felt like a real shame for him to give up on the job he actually wanted, insisting he didn't need to keep living in fear of Ruby. Lloyd stayed quiet, caught somewhere between hesitation and hope. Lyra pointed out that the choice of whether to return to that life was entirely his, and that the idea of Ruby ever finding him again was frankly ridiculous. Touched by their persistence, Lloyd thanked them for being so kind. Lyra and Mars grinned, assuring him that if he decided to become an adventurer, he could always count on them. Lloyd wondered quietly how much longer he intended to live in the past. In that moment, something shifted. The version of him that once cowered before Ruby had finally disappeared. Standing tall with newfound confidence, Lloyd declared himself a new man. With Mars and Lyra smiling beside him, he made his decision. From now on, he would give being an adventurer a real try. Walking through the city streets, Lyra admitted that stepping away from Ruby was a big move forward, even if it felt uncertain. Mars called it a bit depressing to think about. But Lloyd just grinned, savoring the simple relief of walking around without fear of anyone. They passed a bronze statue towering over the square. Lyra explained that it depicted the saint, an important figure of the Emerald Church, who received divine messages. Lloyd only saw a strange old lady carved in bronze. As they parted ways for the night, Lloyd noticed Lloyd wasn't heading toward the inn. Mars warned him that in neighboring kingdoms, calling the saint an old lady would get someone executed on the spot. Lloyd was stunned by how much they knew about religion. Watching Lyra walk off toward her own path, Lloyd muttered to himself, declaring he was hungry and wanted to train his skills, ready to prepare for his debut at the Adventurers Guild. Mars smiled, glad to see him in better spirits. Lyra raised an eyebrow, wondering if acting so confident suited him at all. That night, a group of thugs cornered Lloyd, complaining they were low on cash. Lloyd muttered under his breath, refusing to let his adventuring days end before they even began. One of the men barked at him, demanding to know what he was mumbling about. A massive ice spear tore through the sky. A voice cut through the air, declaring that this was as far the men's cruelty would take them. Lloyd recognized the spell instantly, marveling that ice spear was extremely high, level magic. The mysterious woman ordered him to stay put while she dealt with the thugs. The men shouted back, demanding to know if she wanted to fight, but their bravado cracked once they saw what she was capable of. Lloyd realized in horror that if she cast that spell again, the entire town would end up buried in ice. Acting fast, he moved to physically stop her before it was too late. Once things settled, Lloyd advised her that in situations like this, beginner spells worked better. He explained that Ice Spear, while powerful, was far too difficult to control safely. She apologized quietly, looking embarrassed. She thanked him, saying she'd been the one saved thanks to his help. Lloyd waved it off repeatedly. Watching her, he wondered who exactly she was, dressed like a priest yet wielding such overwhelming magic. She reached toward his face, asking him to hold still, and pointed out that his cheek was bleeding. Lloyd brushed it off as nothing more than a scratch. As she healed him, she noted how close they were, closer than he'd ever gotten, even with Ruby. She explained she specialized in healing magic, her face growing warm at the sudden closeness. They exchanged names. She introduced herself as Iris, and he stumbled through his own name before settling on just Lloyd. She smiled, delighted to learn he'd also just arrived in the city that day. Lloyd admitted, somewhat nervously, that he worked as an adventurer. Iris's smile widened at the answer. When Lloyd asked what she did for work, Iris cheerfully admitted she was currently unemployed. Onlookers whispered that a mage like Lloyd had to be an impressive adventurer, though he brushed off the compliment. Iris mused that they were similar in a way. When Lloyd mentioned wanting to try a certain tapioca milk tea shop, she lit up and asked him to show her the way. Later, standing by a fountain as night set in, Iris mentioned that her attendant was already waiting for her back at the inn. Someone appeared, scolding her for wandering off alone into the dark night, and questioning why Princess Iris was heading home so soon. Lloyd stared, quietly registering the word attendant, realizing she carried herself like an old-fashioned princess. The attendant bowed elegantly and addressed him directly, calling him Prince Lloyd, and apologizing for Iris's selfish behavior, leaving Lloyd frozen in stunned silence. Confused, Iris asked Lloyd to help her find her way home. Lloyd stammered in surprise, but when she said yes to anything and asked if he'd do her a favor, he could only stare. Caught off guard by how straightforward she was, nearby, hidden behind a pillar, Lyra watched the scene unfold with growing curiosity, murmuring that things were starting to get interesting. Mars admitted she'd followed Lloyd because she was worried about him. Lyra's imagination ran wild, spinning the moment into an elaborate tale. An exiled, incompetent prince meets a tragic woman named Iris who falls for him and writes him a love letter, only for his ex-girlfriend, a genius alchemist, to resurface and turn it into a love triangle. Mars pointed out that Lyra had clearly been reading too many strange books, exposing her overactive romantic imagination. As Iris tried to lead the way, Lyra snapped, warning Lloyd not to try anything stupid, or she'd put an arrow through his head. Startled, Lloyd froze, insisting he was busy replenishing his coupling ingredients and telling her to stop it. Following Iris through the streets, Lloyd found himself standing in front of a familiar building. Mars blurted out that this was the Adventurers Guild, stunned, while Iris cheerfully declared that the gods were clearly on her side today. Lyra offered her support with a knowing smile, calling it modest help from a coupling elf of light, wishing Lloyd luck as if reciting a line from some romance novel about an incompetent prince. She mused that happiness could be found when people who shared the same struggles connected with love. Lloyd blinked in confusion as Mars pointed out he could just ask for directions inside instead of wandering aimlessly. Realizing where they'd ended up, he perked up, recognizing the building as the Adventurers Guild, admitting he never expected to end up lost like this. Inside, armored guards and guild staff turned toward them. One of the guild members stepped forward, asking if Lloyd and the others could help with something urgent. A furious guard bellowed, demanding to know who had defiled the portrait of their beloved saint. Confused, everyone exchanged puzzled looks as the man's rage boiled over into open hostility. Piecing it together, one man realized Lloyd was the incompetent mage who had once held back the kingdom's #1 alchemist. Iris looked stricken, realizing in that instant that Lloyd now knew exactly how she saw him as a mage. Elsewhere, a mysterious bald man wondered nervously if Lloyd had somehow recognized his face from the capital. Panic set in as Lloyd desperately searched for a way to stop the chaos without anyone getting hurt. One of the guards shouted that he was the fugitive who fled the capital and was now attacking the guild, ordering the others to seize him. Thinking fast, Lloyd summoned ensnaring vines to hold the attackers back. The vines wrapped tightly around the guards as one of them cried out in shock, unable to cut through the magic no matter how hard he tried. The vines twisted further, coiling grotesquely around the guards' bodies as they screamed in distress, one claiming he could feel it moving inside him. Horrified at what he'd unintentionally created, Lloyd realized he'd made something deeply disturbing. The guild chief burst in, demanding to know what on earth was happening as the men writhed and groaned under the vine's grip. Lloyd tried desperately to explain that this wasn't what it looked like, while Iris looked on, wide-eyed from above. A familiar voice rang out. Looking up, Iris froze in shock, recognizing the woman standing on the balcony as I sold. The blonde stranger asked what on earth was going on, only to be met with the men's pained groaning. When Lloyd asked if Iris knew her, she confirmed that I sold had once served as her bodyguard. As realization dawned, Lloyd stared at Iris in disbelief, wondering if she was truly who he suspected. Around them, voices rippled with shock as her full identity came into focus. Iris Elzerbel Horte, the saint of Holy Roland, standing right there in the middle of the chaos. Kneeling with haste, the guild extended sincere apologies for their previous disrespect towards Saint Iris. Among the gathering, several doubters questioned her worth, dismissing her as just a saint from another land. Their misunderstanding was quickly dispelled. She wielded the rare and formidable holy law power. This holy power purified tainted regions, transforming them into thriving, life-rich territories since childhood. Her country had protected her, as only one scientist is born per nation. Lloyd was shocked to remember that Iris previously claimed to be unemployed despite her esteemed presence. The guild enforcer rushed into the chamber, enraged, declaring punishment for those who dared offend a saint. Alarm grew as the offenders begged for mercy, overwhelmed by the sudden demotion to E rank. Moving ahead, Iris explained she had renounced her sainthood and pleaded for leniency on their behalf. Her surprising statement left the enforcer silent and completely bewildered. Lloyd was puzzled by Iris's unexpected statement, questioning how she could abandon her saintly title. Companions around him grew worried, dreading the consequences if devout followers learned the truth. To their shock, the worshippers cried with admiration, moved by her selfless defense of others. Isolde, reluctant, consented to pardon them so long as Iris remained honest moving forward. Elsewhere, a fresh surge of saint worship erupted, leaving Lloyd both amazed and overwhelmed. As the daylight appeared, finished the quiet town. Lloyd reflected on the chaos they had just overcome. He voiced regret for pulling Iris into his troubles, but she warmly dismissed the blame. She explained her evening solitary had become her first true memory as an ordinary person, having served as a saint all her existence. Iris now started to grasp her own identity. When praised, she grinned softly, saying his gratitude wasn't necessary. Iris joked Lloyd for talking too politely, calling him Prince with a playful smirk, trying to provide something unique. Lloyd finally asked if she wanted to visit the clock tower, lacking delay. He cast magic to lift her into his arms and ascended in a single bound. From the roof, the city spread beneath them under a starlit sky. Iris appreciated the magnificent sight, gently held in Lloyd's arms. Together, they appreciated the glowing streetlights powered by ancient magical stones. Remembering calmer days, he remembered gazing at the town from afar during his lonely material hunts. As sunrise neared, he told her to keep observing. The moment wasn't over yet. Eerily sunshine covered the rooftops, causing the stones to sparkle like scattered stars across the city. Regardless his history, he confessed feeling like just a tired runaway rather than someone special. With ego in her tone, she spent her favorite view, calling him a special friend. A peaceful desire came to find her own place in the vast, beautiful world. His chest warmed, and lacking hesitation, he gently took her hand. Seconds afterward, an awkward fall disrupted the peace, drawing a startled scream from above. Embarrassed, he said, sorry, confessing he just wanted to meet her expectations. Giggles rushed out suddenly, catching both of them off guard. She called him odd, yet grinned kindly, admitting he'd already exceeded her expectations. Rest, she said, was all she wanted for merely peaceful days shared with a friend. Elsewhere, an lively woman stated victory from afar, claiming it all went according to plan. Gazes fixed in interest, someone stepped forward, eager to hear more about this unfolding tale. In the imperial city, Ruby's atelier stood under growing pressure. Irritation flared finished as delayed alchemy orders caused complaints from clients and co-workers alike. An inspector came with grim news. Due to recent failures, the atelier's rank would drop to be panic, set in as she begged, fearing the damage to her credibility. Boiling with anger, she faulted Lloyd's 3-week departure for the spiraling disaster. She quietly faulted the rest of the atelier rod for the ongoing mess. Anger deepened as she remembered being refused, convinced that Lloyd had set the bar too low. Irritation turned to suspicion, believing jealousy from others was the real cause of sabotage. Resolved to push ahead, she swore to replace Lloyd and become a top-class alchemist herself. Lloyd remained beyond the Adventurer Guild, nervously standing for his companions who were nowhere to be seen. Seconds afterward, a towering woman arrived, dragging 2 unconscious figures, his missing teammates, across the floor. She stated an event had compelled her to question them thoroughly. Facing to Lloyd, she cited reports surrounding him and demanded to know why he came to this town. Staggered by the severe questioning, Lloyd gazed in disbelief, wondering if this was really an interrogation. Previous. Within the Grim Guild's inquiry room, Lyra sat restrained while Mars was questioned. Her quiet surprised Mars, who worried at her inability to speak. The examiner quietly stated that she had cast silencing magic to avoid magical retaliation. With doubt increasing, she required answers, accusing Mars of foreign espionage or religious extremism. Lyra worried inside, dreading Mars might reveal her bizarre motive and ruin them both. She desperately pressed Mars to create a believable excuse, hoping to avoid embarrassment. Rather, he directly explained her real intention to act as a cupid of love. Alarm rose through Lyra's thoughts as she realized he missed her warning completely. Where he is, she quietly suffered. Mars explained her romantic ideals, referencing her favorite novel. With a pleased smile, he stated truthfulness would save them much to Lyra's horror. Currently, Lloyd observed his partners collapse after their chaotic explanation. Mortified by the interrogation, Isolde, avoiding penalties, directed them to work unpaid for a month as reparation. She thought on Lloyd rejected as useless in the city yet powerful enough to defeat a rank adventurers. Doubt crept in as she remembered his ties to pair latest incidents and St. Iris's surprise visit. Dreading potential threat, she thought expelling him for the guild's safety and Minerva's protection. As Mars welcomed him brightly, Doubt quietly lingered in Isolde's thoughts. Trapped unaware protector by her question, he fumbled through a nervous denial. Lacking notice, she stated the recruitment test had already begun, leaving him stunned. Their target carried an unknown relic known as the Trial Crystal, capable of measuring hidden strength. Besides assessment, it apparently offered numerous other bizarre purposes, overwhelming him with its versatility. Interest rose as he discovered the crystal could determine one's true professional path. A newfound optimism appeared. Perhaps he could discover work that matched him better. Isolde, observing carefully, believed the crystal could expose something deeper within him. They arrived at the lofty Temple of the Winds, where the artifact expected on the highest floor. On their route up, he questioned if she, too, had previously sought her purpose through the crystal. Merely as he doubted her history, a sudden shift in aura signaled nearby danger underneath. Huge bugs ambushed fellow adventurers, forcing him to recognize the threat Black Spider and Beetle. Mars and Lyra moved ahead boldly, declaring the situation under their control as Class B adventurers. Regardless strong opposition, even divine support couldn't stop the monsters from swarming the corridors. Cutting through with air sorcery, Isolde declared complete extermination the guild's ultimate responsibility. A quick jump and accurate strike sent the spider flying under a burst of physical enhancement. Electricity rose from his rod, stopping an ambush just in time with pinpoint accuracy. Witnesses observed in amazement his movements efficient, his control flawless, contrary to his rumored incompetence. When wondered how he'd confront tougher foes, he casually described a strategy involving 16 magical explosions. Her mind raced. Perhaps he was lying, or he truly possessed terrifying, reckless magical power, all assembled for a pause, and tea was served with playful banter and mild complaints. Mars offered a food to the team, sparking small confusion over its origin. Isolde's ego held a hit when they paused, questioning whether her cooking was edible. Flavors beat hopes, expressions lit up as they enjoyed the rare, warm food in a dungeon. With calm grace, she explained her aristocratic heritage and personal drive to master every skill. After an uneasy interrogate about her practice results, she abruptly ended the conversation and marched off. Lyra silently shared her doubt perhaps Isolde was hiding something from the crystal's reading. He accepted that some facts are private, yet curiosity still lingered as they climbed the stairway. At the peak, the much-expected trial crystal stood shining in the temple's final chamber. Isolde eventually started it, showing her S-rank strength and mastery of advanced magic and swordsmanship. A interrogate about Isolde's calling activated the crystal, prompting immediate concern. Regardless her objections, the ratings began revealing her top roles, starting with martial artist. Alarm grew as holy warrior appeared in second place, and she desperately tried to stop it. Then, to all's shock, the crystal stated her #1 vocation baker. Shocked quiet covered the room before her flushed face gave way to embarrassed outrage. Uneasy quiet fell after Isolde's surprising confession, with everyone unsure how to respond. Lacking notice, an enormous griffin erupted from its pedestal, launching an attack on the group. What they believed for a sculpture turned out to be a lethal guardian, now fully awake. In one quick movement, the beast devoured the crystal whole, leaving the others in shock. Lloyd shouted in anguish, realizing his much-awaited vocation results had just been swallowed forever. A griffin swooped through the capital heavens, clutched a glowing crystal in its talons. Regardless the powerful spell, the beast dodged open air. Explosions erupted around it as Lloyd pushed harder. The heavens cracked with thunder sorcery, shattering part of a spire beneath the beast. Amid the wreckage, Lloyd said sorry, as the companions doubted his judgment. With haste, a swordswoman rallied the team to end the threat before further damage followed. The team wandered through the maze-like temple, uncertain where the beast had vanished. One of them shouted a random interrogate, wishing to lure it out using the crystal's unknown properties. Surprisingly, the crystal glowed in response, and the team spotted the trail merely as somebody mentioned fluffy pancakes. Curious about its function, Lloyd wondered a greater interrogate about a companion's ability. However, the crystal stayed silent, having previously granted that response once. With haste in her tone, Isolde required the others focus on saving lives over worrying about her. Lloyd froze, uncertain of what interrogate to ask, whereas the group stood awkwardly behind him. As inquiries poured in, responses explained her preferred animal and her talent in wind magic. She hesitantly confessed her romance for romance novels, causing surprised reactions. The questioning grew into private territory, making Isolde overwhelmed by their curiosity. Lloyd used a speed-enhancing spell to close the gap, starting the team forward at high velocity. Yet this rapid movement proved too much. Mars struggled to maintain balance and braced for collision. He plummeted beyond the ledge, jokingly vowing to defend his comrades still in death. Elsewhere, explorers ascended the spire, pushing through fatigue and doubts under heavy pressure. Whereas some mocked the other members' appearance, companions silently respected her strength and tough training. As turmoil burst, a griffin attacked while the crystal revealed another strange answer about pajamas. Lloyd and his team crashed down near the beast, eventually closing in after a much pursuit. Isolde directed the evacuation of novices, whereas Lloyd prepared for a last confrontation. He launched a powerful water spell, wishing to push the griffin beyond for a decisive strike. Determined and resolved, Lloyd vowed to retrieve the crystal, whereas Isolde questioned his intense fixation. Reports painted Lloyd as a weak mage, but his profound monster knowledge and versatile sorcery told a different story. Questions about his obsession using the crystal caused unease among his allies. A shocking scene explained Lloyd controlling St. Iris, casting doubt on his intentions. Zone of their allies cast quiet magic, overwhelmed with emotion and blame. To everyone's shock, she had mastered one mighty variant. Thanks to Lloyd's guidance in secret, a fierce blast launched from overhead, striking the griffin head-on as it recoiled in stun. With the beast defeated, the crystal was eventually expelled from its mouth, causing gasps from the team. As they scrambled for it, Lloyd arrived, out and made his desire to learn his genuine calling. The response resounded clearly: he was fated to be Ruby's servant. In peaceful resolve, Lloyd confessed he had been studying alchemy single to support her. Ruby proudly stated Lloyd her helper, destroying his carefully written notes in the process. Crumbling under strain, Lloyd confessed he obeyed her single to avoid ridicule and rejection. Before he could process his emotions, the griffin launched a shock assault. In a bold push, Isolde intervened, reminding him which he controls his destiny, not the crystal. Using firm resolve, she shouted her ego in choosing her route even if it wasn't perfect. Lloyd gazed at Isolde in awe, touched by her courage and determination. They coordinated their scheme. She would force the griffin out of the spire, and he would deliver the last blow. Together, they unleashed a devastating combo of air and thunderstorm sorcery, blasting the beast away. Within the peaceful, the shattered crystal was softly recovered. With calm restored, the team laughed as old doubts turned way to new trust and understanding. Isolde offered support, assuring Lloyd that change was feasible in their fresh home. Curious and caring, she wondered the crystal for Lloyd's preferred meal revealed to be pot au feu. To celebrate his success, she pledged to treat him, lighting up his confront using joy. Lloyd cleared the adventurer's test and was accepted by friends and guildmates alike. Now portion of a team, he was invited to enter a quest, the highly next day. Isolde outwardly suggested at her availability, secretly wishing to be invited on this adventure. After cheeky requests and teasing from the team, she reluctantly consented to join, earning smiles all around. Observing them interact, Lloyd silently felt a sense of belonging and optimism for his future. Times afterward, existence in Minerva resumed peacefully at a cozy inn. A cheerful chef offered Iris a hot handcrafted breakfast, marking a gentle, fresh beginning. The chef was shocked to learn Iris had skipped breakfast to practice sorcery, making his menu untouched. Her change in behavior since arriving in Minerva became obvious, still to this rod. Suspicious, Nero pressed Safiria for responses, asking if Lloyd's status influenced her transformation. Safiria explained which Iris had snuck out to see Lloyd, and now looked ahead to their meetings. Outraged he hadn't heard sooner, Nero worried and required details, sparking even further confusion and noise. Lloyd collapsed on a soft, oversized pudding, unaware of what expected him. Elsewhere, Nero silently stated his intention to join the next escort mission. With a compelled smile and ominous tone, Nero anticipated their future meeting, prompting the rod to nervously arrange a next escort for security. At the Explorers Guild, a team returned early beyond a mission expected to take times. Regardless saying elite status, 2 members privately confessed they hadn't done anything. Elsewhere, a lady brought an enormous cake, explaining it was for her subordinates who liked her baking. She turned to Lloyd, urging him to total 1 appeal on his own. Lloyd, trapped unaware protector, was reminded he still handled tasks for others. He liked a quiet existence, proudly claiming slow living as the best. Whereas some requested food, one lady accused another of being overly attached to him. Resolved to reflect, she pressed personally to create space and left Lloyd to handle commissions in the Great Forest vid. He reviewed tasks, aiming to finish multiple objectives rapidly, including a goblin subjugation mission, which merely concluded. A suggestion beyond his companion hinted he could skip rest using sorcery, sparking a fresh idea. Unexpected alarm burst as someone pointed out the contradiction between working nonstop and wanting a slow-paced life, saying he lacked any private ambition or clear calling in his so-called peaceful lifestyle. Compelled meal and requests rained down, pushing him to eat quickly and get back to work. Traying with the strain, he paused, while memories of a warm meal gently surfaced resolved. He stated he'd cook not for companions, but for himself and named pot au feu as his choice. Curry was the preferred choice for some, but pot au feu carried sentimental value beyond childhood times in the orphanage. Using fresh ingredients and well water, he poured passion inside, making a version far past what he previously knew. Abruptly, a demand for curry cut through the sky, throwing unaware his focus. Merely then, a woman floated unconscious across the water, catching him completely off guard. Pulled from the water, she laughed nervously, confessing to being trapped in an embarrassing scene. Wary as practicing sorcery near Minerva, she lost command and ended up carried downstream by the river. Recollections of her servants made her worried. Certain they were growing worried with each passing hour, he offered to cook his preferred food and help. Previously her clothes dried, which she gratefully accepted. Curry showed in the pot, sparking shock and a sense of rivalry from those clothes. Overcome, he sank into self-doubt, unable to cook properly, naming himself useless regardless everyone's support. She had silently taken finished food and poured care into every step. Praising his efforts with a bright smile, she called his food truly good, making him embarrassed and grateful. Discussion turned to Ruby, his mage companion. Curry, her preferred dish, came up as a shared memory. He spoke with respect, downplaying his own role, whereas remembering her great ambition, her hot words reminded him of his value. Helping companions, even quietly, still held deep meaning. One thought crossed his thoughts. Spending a peaceful life alongside Iris felt like a beautiful dream. Chance up, he confessed, which distancing himself from Ruby hadn't fixed anything, and that change needed to start within, explaining how her absence of change cost her position while a saint. Realization hit. Regardless being jointly, he understood almost nothing about her. As giggles covered the sky over a shared meal, something unexpected caused a burst of surprise. Concealed in the bushes, a man observed anxiously, alarmed by whatever Lloyd was giving Iris. Beside the fire, Iris described how Cephelia had swallowed each dish Nero had ready. Interest rose in Lloyd as he noticed the joy Iris radiated, whereas speaking about her servants, suddenly, a smiling woman neared, taking both of them off guard with her unexpected arrival. Garments wet and look flat, the maid remarked. She had drifted even farther downstream than usual. Using a graceful bow, she introduced personally as Tairuru, Iris's loyal attendant and head maid. Tairuru came with Cephelia's belongings, surprised to learn Iris had come all that route solitary. Frustrated, Tairuru scolded Iris for recklessly practicing higher sorcery, making tension to rise. Reflecting silently, Iris doubted whether using her power to help companions might be a better path forward. Lloyd moved in, proposing he'd take duty for guiding Iris through sorcery training. With all's approval, Iris beamed, full of faith in Lloyd's power and support. As the team walked toward a wide clearing, confusion appeared about why Tairuru had came them. Nero inspected the region, criticizing the absence of proper tools and suspecting someone's food. Tairuru calmly sampled the meal, saying it was to test for poison while chaos stirred behind her. She handed finished a radish, whereas praising the curry, comparing it fondly to Nero's normal dishes. Driven by obligation, Nero held a bite and froze, shocked by the flavor he didn't expect. Nero was overcome by this curry's perfect texture and balance, comparing it to an imperial feast. Regardless its excellence, he sensed something ominous inside, announcing it an abnormal dish. Elsewhere, Lloyd instructed Iris in water sorcery, as suspicions about the curry's source quietly grew. With confidence, Iris responded to her mentor, summoning an immense surge with determined power. As water rose uncontrollably, worry grew. But Iris cheerfully insisted everything was under control. Iris stated her determination to improve, and Lloyd pledged to aid her no matter what, reflecting on his own experience. Lloyd remembered how he initially discovered water dragon magic. That experience held him back to a desperate scene in the desert where survival awakened his power. Elsewhere, companions secured the region, ensuring Iris was safe from the river's reach. Regardless pleas and curry, Nero directed Sephilia to defeat Lloyd, fearing the threat he posed. Sephilia launched a fierce radish slash, triggering an enormous explosion that shocked all watching. Lloyd responded using his water dragon spell, unleashing a powerful surge as turmoil burst around them. Beyond this water, Nero tried to issue commands, but Sephilia had previously eaten the key ingredient. Teruru stormed in, scolding Nero for driving Sephilia too far anew with careless schemes. Merely then, a monstrous legion fish appeared, threatening them all with its overwhelming status. A mighty flame arrow kindled the war zone, shaking the swarm's formation with explosive force. Regardless the blow, waves of fish continued their relentless charge, immense every defenses. Lacking delay, a rush of ice spear magic pierced the swarm, freezing the path ahead. Shards burst throughout the water's surface, making panic as unintended consequences took hold. A unexpected hail of frozen enemies descended, taking all off guard mid-spell. Lacking delay, Teruru threw personally over Iris, shielding her from the incoming barrage. All observed in dismay as the impact launched them across the water's surface. Amid the turmoil, Nero fought back fiercely, cutting through the fish with unexpected fury. When the smoke cleared, worry stayed both had survived. But something was clearly wrong. Deceiving motionless among the wreckage, Teruru didn't answer, making Iris frozen in shock. Gazes widened as alarm set in one a mismove, and Teruru would be lost to the current. Sorcery rose from Iris's outstretched palm, summoning a mighty water dragon to turn the tide. Determination burned in her tone. She refused to let anyone suffer, whereas she remained by. All observed in awe as the swirling waters responded. Optimism flickering back into their gazes, encased in one defensive sphere. Teruru reappeared, safe her rescue total as Iris collapsed in relief. The team rushed ahead, yelling Teruru's name as she collapsed onto the ground. Faint yet conscious, she opened her gazes and softly praised the beauty of Iris's sorcery. Lloyd observed in quiet, realizing she had cast the power he once needed for survival selflessly. A hot smile formed as respect warmed within him, deeply moved by her resolve. Nero neared, apologizing with sincerity and thanks, bridging faith where conflict once stood. With a straight confront, Lloyd presented a freshly prepared Legion fish sashimi platter, baffling all close. As thanks covered the sky, Teruru and Iris exchanged heartfelt words while Nero flailed in concern. Bright-eyed and smiling, Iris praised her teacher with sincerity that trapped him utterly off guard. Overcome, Lloyd launched himself skyward in stun, covered with joy over her progress and praise. Again at the kitchen, focus shifted. The uncommon Legion fish hinted at troubling changes near Minerva. Doubt covered the sky as the team questioned whether the monster attack was mere coincidence. Lloyd remembered encounters with other high-tier beasts, evidence that something abnormal was unfolding in Minerva. Discussion turned to the Temple of Winds, where one such beast had mysteriously showed. Temples were previously sanctuaries now. Still, they appeared vulnerable to rising threats. Gazes turned to the crumbling temple. Ominous signs pointed to greater problems awaiting within. The scientist channeled her sorcery to uphold a defensive barrier nearby the temple. A team discovered signs of disruption beside the Temple of Winds, suspecting an abnormality linked to the shrine's protection. Upon arrival, they witnessed the enormous breach tearing across the enchanted barrier, threatening the structure's integrity. The team regrouped beyond, realizing companions had sensed the disturbance and assembled in response. Reunited, the wounded were tended to, confirming the pressing threat looming finished the country. Signs of a fierce battle were evident as the team discovered about the latest Griffin assault. Within confusion, they confirmed the crater was created by the severe clash, not a natural phenomenon. Due to the scientist's distance at different shrine, her comeback would be late for 2 weeks. Resolving to serve, the current scientist volunteered to perform a purification ritual profound inside the shrine. Where his preparation started, different companion requested Lloyd's help as the ritual to restore the barrier neared. Appeal was made for Lloyd to accompany Iris into the shrine's deepest room, regardless his own doubts. Faith in Lloyd's dependability comforted the others, putting their worries at ease. As they ready, a light-hearted discussion about safe beasts briefly lifted the mood. They soon descended inside a much-forgotten stairs, where warnings of lurking creatures raised tension. Cautiously going greater, the team stayed alert against threats that could strike from behind. Doubt appeared as the warrior sensed a disturbing aura from Nero's cooking, finding it untrustworthy. Regardless concerns, Iris stayed calm and confident in Lloyd's ability to protect and aid their cause. Suddenly, Threat struck from overhead, prompting Lloyd to unleash an electricity spell and save Nero. Whereas turmoil unfolded, Iris tended to the wounded as companions debated the edibility of strange monsters. To all stun, an enormous king beetle appeared, looming menacingly in the temple corridor. Using a quick and powerful blow, Sephilia unleashed a holy slash, cutting through the enemy. Her display of accuracy left the companions shocked, revealing her past as a formidable holy knight. Whereas Lloyd retrieved an insect leg, its sheer size reminded them of the monster's king-tier grade. Suddenly, Sephilia collapsed from exhaustion, prompting worry as Lloyd understood she hadn't eaten. Nero moved in to ready the food, suggesting spices and slicing to neutralize its overpowering scent. Following food, Nero proudly presented the dish, and Sephilia swallowed it with delight, praising the flavor. Lloyd and the companions were surprised by how delicious beetles could be until pressing report interrupted them. One desperate call arrived and high-tier beasts were approaching, and the barrier needed activation immediately. Whereas Lloyd's culinary skills rose interest, the looming threat pulled their focus back to reality. Suddenly, a minotaur stormed into sight, prompting Iris and her allies to launch a quick defense. Using coordinated attacks, the team launched a mighty assault that shattered the enemy and the about stone. Victorious, they walked ahead across the crumbling ruins, each carrying their own calling. Lloyd started to understand Iris's dedication to sorcery as she led them toward the cleansing room. Nero, ever doubtful, remarked on Lloyd's optimism with mild disapproval. Iris, nevertheless, hinted that their mission carried greater burdens than he understood. Within the grand room, Iris announced the start of the cleansing ritual and wondered for protection. Prior to the ritual might begin, an unexpected explosion interrupted them as Sephilia and Iris prepared for battle. Lloyd discovered one dagger embedded in the ground, merely as enemies made a dramatic entrance. A masked figure explained personally, mocking them and announcing a bounty placed on the scientists. Realizing the threat, Nero identified the intruder as an killer, threw beyond Roland targeting Iris. Lloyd launched a spell as the masked attacker charged, scattering rubble throughout the room. To their shock, the enemy was quickly defeated, making the team momentarily stunned. But the success was short-lived. The genuine enemy revealed multiple clones and struck Nero down, taking Lyra unaware protector while Lloyd and the others struggled to hold the line. Lofty finished the battlefield. A monstrous beast started tearing through the temple walls. With fear gripping the gathering, soldiers recognized the frightening force, a high-level country eater, prompting pressing calls to protect the civilians. Whereas Iris engaged the opponent, allies raced to activate the protective barrier before the beast broke through. Masked killer called Black Crow confronted her victim with deadly precision. A tense standoff unfolded as Lloyd doubted the state of the barrier and the opponent's unexpected appearance. Iris struggled to contain the spreading harm, whereas doubt arose over the forbidden artifact in her possession. Within the confusion, masked assassins argued amongst themselves, showing far further than intended. The old rod of holy destruction, much sealed away, had resurfaced its power once used in demon wars. Using the saint absent, the opponent's scheme succeeded. The barrier weakened. Lloyd confronted Iris, desperate to understand her careless actions as threat closed in on every side. Lacking notice, twin assassins launched a lethal ambush, targeting Iris with precision strikes. The attackers explained their ability about the group with swift and relentless coordination. Realizing his limitations, Lloyd started a defensive barrier, entrusting the fight to his companions. Using an intense charge, the Maid Warrior unleashed a mighty holy sword, and Nero faced using overwhelming sword strain. The assassins paused. Sephilia charged, yet fell victim to a mighty illusion technique called Future and History. Within the hallucination, recollections of a peaceful scene and gifted pastries resurfaced as she sat alone by a wall. She whispered in awe, entranced by a taste she had not ever called in her hardened existence. Touched by her reaction, still her enemies grew emotional, realizing she had never called comfort beyond battle until now. Surrounded by delicious meal, Sephilia indulged, lacking restraint, her chest's longing laid bare in the illusion. As the illusion deepened, the opponent mocked their vulnerability, notice which anyone trapped in comfort would never awaken, his own desires pulling him inside the dream as he doubted whatever he truly sought. Visions of calm appeared. Sephilia imagined a future where all could share warm meals without conflict. Even Iris succumbed, envisioning personally forgetting duties for merely one further bite. Lloyd understood this assassins were targeting Iris, making him to consider dropping the barrier and entering the fray himself. Within the illusion, twisted desires appeared. Nero praised Iris's beauty, whereas urging her to eat more. Turmoil burst as Nero fed endlessly, immense the assassins and breaking their composure under the illusion's strain. Using the dream fading, Lloyd confronted the opponent, announcing he needed no illusions to win against them. One desperate scheme formed. Lloyd commanded Nero to cook anew. Lloyd offered his ingredients, convincing Nero to cook, regardless the battlefield turmoil developing around them. Together, they prepared a murderous open fight, astonishing all with their odd yet determined collaboration. As battle resumed, Ophelia launched an intense counterattack, her renewed clarity shattering the illusion with one decisive blow. Their scheme succeeded. This rod of holy destruction was broken. With illusions dispelled, the barrier started to close, and even the enemy confessed loss to Ophelia's overwhelming appetite. Using doom looming, a pair of allies worried in fear, whereas the colossal monster prepared to end it all. This barrier completed saving all and halting this monster's advance. Lloyd, now peaceful, assessed the problem, noting the strewn enemy and preparing for a counterattack. But a sinister twist appeared. Beaten clones were being absorbed into a fresh, ominous threat. The opponent merged their power, unleashing an enraged charge, but Lloyd countered using enhanced speed and sheer force. To confront the powerful enemy, Lloyd unleashed strengthening sorcery, meant for the highest class monsters. The force of his blow threw shockwaves throughout the temple, leaving the assassin stunned and in disbelief. Afterward, a soldier came to arrest Iris, prompting Lloyd to interrogate the motives after her bounty. Black Crow explained this reality. The Prince of Holy Roland sought to erase Iris for disrupting his ambitions. Iris silently confirmed her banishment, eventually acknowledging the reality herself. Iris explained the prince's genuine aim to provoke a war against their kingdom, shocking everyone with the scale of the threat. She wanted Lloyd to accompany her to the city, where Ruby expected, in order to stop the invasion. Whereas traveling by carriage, aristocratic questions Iris's claim that the prince aims war at palace. Iris explains that Prince Geese often argued for military expansion to subdue neighboring lands. She remembers opposing his position, arguing it mirrored the demons who invaded 2 centuries earlier. While one result of her opposition, this prince labeled her a fraud and exiled her. Now, she aims to stop attack by forming an alliance with Melzeria's queen. Lloyd tries to steady himself as Iris observes calmly, sensing something's wrong. Their carriage arrives in the city of Melzeria, a capital covered with ornate towers. Within the palace, nobles display their refined fashion to please the queen's taste for beauty. The monarch welcomes Isolde using praise for her efforts guarding the holy temple. Prior to formality's end, Iris steps ahead to deliver an pressing message to her majesty. Report of Roland's aggression shocks the monarch, whereas nobles whisper about Iris's exile. Focus moves to Lloyd, whose standing suffers due to his low material collection rate. Regardless harsh amazement, Iris defends him, reminding all that Lloyd defeated the Black Crow. Her anger grows while she hears taunts hurled at Lloyd, naming the judgment unfair and cruel. Breaking the quiet, the monarch denounces the gathering's behavior as utterly inelegant. The monarch challenges Lloyd, implying grace lies in calmness, even when facing threat. Lloyd is taken before Dandelion, Melzeria's showy and unusual knight commander. Mocked for his clothing, Lloyd pauses, whereas Dandelion demands proof of elegance in combat. While the conflict begins, Isolde steps in to aid Lloyd, urging him to regain focus. Elsewhere, Ophelia and her companion ready to join, intending to humiliate their opponent in style. Dandelion spots and chance. But Ophelia and her companion fumble, distracted by food talk. He unleashes a mighty push, Dandy Giga Bloom Flash, announcing the battle concluded. As the smoke clears, Iris moves for Lloyd, pained by how cruelly he was mocked. She reminds him of his history heroism and urges him to rise and confront this challenge. Together, they charge ahead to confront the flashy warrior, resolved to turn the tide. As the noise beyond grows louder, a resolved woman declares it's time for her battle. She soon greets Crowley, this legendary mage of the Sorcery Association, using great respect. Crowley humbly dismisses this attempted hell to travel, noting carriages make everything easier now. Although living silently, Crowley remains the famed hero who previously defeated the Demon King. Seeing an opportunity, the woman plots to win him finished using homemade cookies and charm. Crowley quietly activates defense sorcery after an explosive cookie surprise, leaving the girl stunned. She defends her food, saying the aim was a spicy flavor, not destruction. Regardless the mishap, she hands finished the appeal slip, grateful for his quick readiness to help. Crowley reads the appeal aloud, an uncommon phantom flower beyond a dangerous, unexplored zone. Using amazement, he questions this impossible deadline she set by tomorrow. This woman assures Crowley she isn't sending him on foot, offering a teleportation circle rather. To her shock, Crowley has never found an actual one before, and is impressed. Nevertheless, he softly criticizes her for being too casual about important matters beyond of alchemy. Elsewhere, Dandelion warns of the unexplored zone, saying it might wipe out an army overnight. She laughs, unaware of the threat, unable to believe the threat is truly which severe. In the midst of conflict, Lloyd effortlessly fulfills different requests, merely as expected. Crowley listens in awe, realizing if it's every genuine, Lloyd may be past his level. Pair Lloyd and the woman exchange glances, shaken by the weight of which realization. Dandelion drops in loss, and Crowley observes Lloyd in silence, stunned by his immense power. Yet, he gives support, thinking she too could reach such greatness in time. Haunted by harsh remarks and loss, Pair Lloyd and the woman awaken from troubled dreams, fueled by irritation. She lashes out, comparing companions' setbacks to Lloyd's past achievements. Her anger escalates while she discredits heroes and mocks this mage prior. To her, Crowley's presence flares, his fury ignited by taunts against those he previously fought beside. Using stern determination, he requires that Lady Alchemia retract her disrespectful words. Crowley's power surges, yet something abruptly erupts between him and Alchemia. She screams in alarm, surprised by the surprising blast unfolding before her eyes. In an instant, Crowley collapses to the earth, knocked senseless beyond the force. Realization strikes the cookie, combined with his fiery presence, activated an enchanted detonation. As guards rush in, Alchemia continues screaming, overcome by the turmoil she accidentally created. In the Holy Kingdom of Roland, turmoil brews as report spreads of Black Crow's loss. Leaders express regret finished misjudged alliances and interrogate the repercussions of their choices. Elsewhere, Lloyd continues going ahead. Unaware of the gathering storm, Lloyd remained awkwardly in festive clothing, unaware of the impression he made. A noblewoman sharing a lavish bath appreciated his transformation, seeing him in a fresh light. Afterward, before the imperial palace, Lloyd's contributions drew focus. His deeds, once doubted, now earned recognition from the king and nobles. A powerful lady pressed restraint, explaining that the previous conflict was provoked by the Holy Roland Kingdom. She requested that the army not be mobilized in private. She reminded Lloyd which avoiding war spared innocent citizens beyond harm, a wiser, gentler route, agreeing to a diplomatic approach. The palace opted for trade sanctions. Although burdensome, it was a choice that honored calm. Before the throne, the monarch emphasized that halting Prince Geese was essential. She reminded all present that Lloyd, of all people, should identify the urgency. Wary as grateful, he couldn't help but wonder if Iris had been quietly burdened by mind of the prince. Their mission completed, Iris was entrusted to Lloyd's care for the day. The unexpected duty trapped him unaware guard. Tairuru encouraged them to explore, whereas she headed to the Adventurers Guild with little delay. The pair consented. As they walked, Iris wondered about the prince. Lloyd, smiling, suggested they explore, whereas talking, keen to rest the tension. Lloyd awkwardly understood his interrogate about the prince struck a nerve. Iris, reflecting silently, confessed their beliefs clashed. Though the prince once sought peace through desperate means, elsewhere, a heated debate broke out. One together required command of outside lands to prepare for a coming demon invasion. Regardless the aim to unite the realm, Iris criticized the plan, knowing it would only lead to countless needless deaths. The argument deepened. The prince countered, saying the saint's holy power solitary wasn't enough to prevent war. Again using Lloyd, Iris hid her pain behind a smile. He could single imagine the burden she carried. Lloyd and Iris stumbled upon the enchanted traveling fair. The sight taken back childhood recollections for Iris, who pointed excitedly at the roller coaster. They boarded the dragon-shaped ride as the cart rose ahead. Lloyd remembered clinging to an actual dragon during a fierce battle long ago. Astonished, Lloyd questioned how the coaster operated. Iris, somewhat unimpressed, confessed recent events had dulled her sense of thrill. Their interest was answered whenever they spotted a muscular man powering the ride manually, much to their stun. The man Dandelion calmly stated he did it as a workout entertaining children, whereas building strength. Whereas Lloyd awkwardly accepted praise from children, Dandelion humbly insisted Lloyd's power surpassed his own, lifting spirits and young ones with rest. After sharing the fare, Dandelion wanted them a pleasant date and held his leave, prompting Lloyd and Iris to consider heading back. As the heavens dimmed, Iris opened up. She wondered whether, if calm arrived, Lloyd wanted for her to return to her saintly duties or seek happiness elsewhere. Reflecting on her history, she explained she had been chosen early for holy practice due to her magical potential. She stated that wielding holy power carried immense duty, the burden of protecting the kingdom's very borders. Iris, puffing with ego, stated personally elite. Only those mastering history, politics, and sacred rites could become saints. Lloyd appreciated her dedication. She softly confessed that her desire stemmed from a desire to protect others. Recollections of Roland covered her mind, her mother at the market, her father checking on her during school, her hard-working brothers, and the kind people she grew up with. Although her conflict using this prince worsened and led to banishment, she didn't waver. Loyal comrades remained by her together, offering aid and believing in her cause. Iris confessed which returning to her role as a saint would be difficult. What she truly longed for was a peaceful existence with those she cherished. Below her power, she confessed a simple truth: she feared being alone. Lloyd remained quietly touched by her honesty. Despite his struggles, he saw how resilient Iris truly was. Resolved, she promised to do anything to make him smile. Lloyd, overcome, whispered his thanks as the moon hung quietly overhead. Afterward, a hot welcome expected them. Iris was greeted with honor and celebration for her efforts in the capital. Giggles resounded around the table as all spent a grand meal. Lloyd credited the delicious dishes to teamwork, despite teasing from a hungry friend. With calm joy, Iris suggested they celebrate again. Previously calm was secured. Lloyd grinned, wishing it would mark a true new beginning. They sealed the scene with a promise, their hands clasped below the hot glow of a peaceful evening. Elsewhere, Ruby sat in a prison cell. Reports of her slip grew. Panic had led her to attack a mage. Frustrated and enraged, she refused this accusations, unable to accept the reality of her downfall. Alarm overtook her. Irritation flared as she cried out, unable to understand why no one defended her. Regardless, saying, noble status, isolation wrapped tighter around her. Voices resounded from close cells. Some mocked her failure. Companions complained about meal. One voice questioned her identity, sensing something familiar. She remained firm, unwilling to deny it. Ego refused to let her shrink, even when somebody called her the kingdom's leading alchemist. And surprising provide came. They wanted her to accompany them to Roland, despite the circumstances. Confusion rose. The other prisoners bickered, debating her value, whereas she remained stunned by their chaotic reasoning. Doubt covered the cell as one prisoner rejected any chance of escape. But to everyone's shock, different casually picked the lock, proving otherwise. Concerns arose regarding the journey ahead, but instead than fear, the challenge single ignited Ruby's determination. She proposed a solution: if somebody could use sorcery, they could activate a teleportation circle concealed in her atelier. Feigning innocence, she decided to tag along, planning to afterward change all fault onto the group. Guards discovered the breakout too late. Beyond, one prisoner explained she was single, a clone, whereas the real escape unfolded under moonlight. Lloyd, yet wearing his apron, was interrupted open preparation as a pressing message summoned everyone to the reception hall. Puzzled by the early gathering, the team speculated, whereas entering, welcomed by an unusual silence and a tense atmosphere. A grim announcement came. Somebody of high standing in the city had nearly been assassinated. Graver frontier soldiers had been attacked, and the suspect reportedly escaped alongside the notorious Black Crow. Lacking notice, war burst. Roland's forces started their invasion of Melzeria, catching everyone off guard, even as breakfast remained unfinished. The priestess remained before him, burdened by regret. Her history actions, meant to help, had only made things worse. Regardless warnings regarding the approaching army, she resolved to return. If anyone could halt the prince, it had to be her. She offered her farewell to those who had remained by her. Resolved, she made preparations to depart, making behind security for duty. One man recalled something crucial. A teleportation circle concealed in the atelier could provide a safer route to Roland. Yet delay gripped him. Using that route meant confronting Ruby, somebody he had hoped never to face again. Faced with overwhelming stress, Lloyd collapsed before he could talk Ruby's name. His allies observed powerlessly as panic overtook him. Whereas he rested senseless, those around him speculated about his unspoken mind. The fear that silenced him hinted at something deeply troubling. One woman, reflecting on her haste, understood her strain may have driven him beyond his limits. Regret settled in her chest. An unusual artifact was presented, an elegant tool beyond the fiends, renamed for formality. It held the power to bridge minds. With it, an individual could enter different's mind by sleeping close, opening a hidden path into Lloyd's guarded consciousness. Although the outcome was uncertain, one woman volunteered, lacking delay, ready to use the mind-entering device. Before beginning, she offered a peaceful apology and sat beside Lloyd. The companions decided to stay behind, prepared to intervene if anything went amiss. Lloyd awoke in a odd, lofty room, confused. He slowly recognized it as the atelier, but something felt off. Abruptly, Ruby showed in monstrous form, berating him with fury. Lloyd understood he had unfinished business with her. Crushed by regret and her words, he raced into self-fault. Doubt overcome him as he apologized to Iris in his thoughts. With unwavering resolve, Iris moved ahead, her tone cutting through the chaos as she called out to Lloyd. She remained firm against the monstrous Ruby, defending Lloyd's value lacking delay. Her declaration as his friend shook the room. Refusing to accept this cruel labels, she denounced Ruby's treatment of Lloyd. Her anger rose as she required his release. A spell rushed forth, water dragon crashing into Ruby with force. Iris observed the impact, relief rising as her assault landed. Regardless the success, she quickly reassessed in this imaginary realm. Brute strength alone wouldn't be enough to win. Lloyd sank into anguish, paralyzed by fear and doubt. Ruby's looming status left him questioning his value previously more. Regardless support from friends, his fear remained. Iris pressed him to leave her behind, but he refused to abandon her. As alarm appeared, Iris's plea broke through. She didn't want power, she wished honesty. All he had to do was ask for help. Recollections of history returned. He had always tried to shoulder everything solitary, but now he realized the strength in trusting others. Reaching out using renewed resolve, Lloyd grasped Iris's palm, no longer solitary, but supported, ready to stand together against the storm. Iris showed before them as a lofty figure, her newfound status overwhelming. Lloyd and Ruby could single stare in awe and disbelief. With calm assurance, she contained Ruby effortlessly, sealing her within a jar. Calm settled finished the dreamlike realm at last. As their minds returned to reality, Lloyd stirred beside Iris. Thanks covered his mind she had remained by him when he faltered. Rising from bed, he addressed the team. The teleportation circle in the atelier could now be cast lacking hesitation. Freed from the weight of Ruby's tone, Lloyd felt lighter. For the initial moment, he faced ahead with confidence and clarity. Lloyd came at Ruby's door seeking her help. However, a protector blocked him, announcing the position restricted to outsiders. Within, turmoil had burst. Report grew that the house's owner was under investigation for attempted murder, leaving everyone stunned. Regardless the rising tension, Lloyd suggested postponing confrontation. The team shifted focus, agreeing to use the closed sorcery circle instead. He stated that the circle would transport them to his gathering site in Roland, a position vital to their next push. As they ready, concerns surfaced regarding facing the prince. Lloyd, however, promised responses after teleportation, his intent clear but unread. Prior to departure, Nero handed Lloyd a large sack of snacks, reminding him which provisions were merely as vital as courage. Isolde, resolute in her duty, consented to enter them. She had previously ensured her responsibilities would be covered during her departure. Companions, including Sephilia and her allies, voiced a desire to come but ultimately chose to stay behind, not wanting to be a burden. Though worried, Tairuru supported Iris's decision. Her worry stayed, but she placed her faith in Iris's strength. The team assembled one by one. They prepared for teleportation, the sorcery circle shining as their journey to Roland was set to begin. Lloyd gazed towards the snowy mountains, steeling himself for the confrontation forward using Prince Geese. Elsewhere, two travelers struggled through the cold, unaware of the threat. Soldiers suddenly identified one of them as the infamous Black Crow. Lacking notice, pair were arrested and handcuffed. Confused and frightened, they received no explanation, only orders to remain silent. Stun set in as one of them was informed she was previously sentenced to death in different country. A week after their imprisonment, the woman remained firm as they eventually reached the capital. Her eyes were sharp, hiding unease beneath composure. In this throne chamber, an agent in disguise reported the failed assassination, offering a fresh prisoner as compensation. Witnessing the odd theatrics, the woman doubted her decision to follow the agent, unsure whether trust had been misplaced. Within Roland Castle, officials reported progress on the war front, talking boldly as they approached the prince. The prince sat atop his throne, peaceful but alert. The woman understood he was Roland's prince, the one now judging her fate. Prior to a grand portrait of the downed king, the prince vowed to fulfill his father's dream, uniting the continent and saying the throne. With unwavering devotion, Ezekiel pledged her aid. Their partnership was praised, whereas tension among the others remained unspoken but clear. This prince accepted Ezekiel's patience, casting one subtle contrast between her and the impulsive Iris. Frustrations about Iris's careless actions surfaced. One advisor aired grievances, whereas different focused on stabilizing the nation. Though Ezekiel offered a calm status, Iris observed from the together, concealing her thoughts behind laughter as old wounds lingered. A fresh report explained that Black Crow had been captured, though the assassination attempt on Iris had failed previously. Further, displeased using their failure, the prince rejected them pair as worthless. His harsh tone cut through the hall. Chained and kneeling, the girls were handed a death sentence lacking delay, their faces frozen in disbelief. Iris resisted fiercely, yelling her position and demanding release. But her pleas resounded against unmoved guards. At that scene, Ezekiel intervened quietly, asking to spare their lives and requesting the right to take duty for them. Released from their chains, The girls understood they had narrowly fled execution, saved single by the saint's intervention. Elsewhere in the castle, several odd people drew focus with their bizarre appearances and odd questions. Each one introduced themselves with a grim or shameful admission. Criminals, exiles, and heretics equally remained in that room. They discussed Ezekiel's history, showing she hailed from a fallen country and now served as Roland's appointed saint. Whenever Iris entered and saw the assembled outcasts, she paused, uncertain of what future expected them all under Ezekiel's command. Ezekiel entered with a lofty beast at her together, stunning all with its overwhelming presence and power. She quietly referred to the beast as her pet and started distributing tasks, brushing aside their fear. Her genuine goal surfaced. She sought alchemical resources and required labor from the assembled team, referring to them as slaves. Lone chemists protested, showing the threat of the unexplored areas they were ordered to enter, accusing her of sentencing them to death. Lacking delay, the beast struck him down. Ezekiel observed coldly, while the others stared in silent horror. Ezekiel clarified using one chilling smile which their mission wasn't a command. It was their destiny. Her look twisted into something monstrous as she stated total command over their lives, demanding absolute obedience. Under her threats, the team was shoved out, compelled to begin their lethal journey without time to protest. Previously beyond, the notice continued failure to complete the task meant immediate execution, no exceptions. Ahead lay a forbidden zone untouched by holy defense. Iris doubted her choices, realizing the threat was far graver than expected. Black Crow thought on how the prince previously favored Ezekiel for her gentleness, yet now she wielded power harshly and lacking remorse. The team understood opposition was hopeless. Even if they disagreed, opposing her meant certain death. Resolved to survive, the clown proposed unity. Working together, he believed, was their single chance to endure the test ahead. Prior to any scheme could form, a monstrous, three-headed beast suddenly attacked, breaking through the snow with frightening force. All froze in terror as the beast lunged. Iris and the companions could single scream, caught off guard and defenseless. The team fled as the gigantic chihuahua-like beast chased them down. Iris shouted to take refuge in a close cave, but alarm turned to dismay. What looked like a cave was actually a lurking beast, a dark Alrone standing to strike. With no more option, Black Crow started rapidly cloning personally. Iris, exasperated, demanded she contribute something useful. Regardless the effort, the clones were swallowed one after different. The monster continued chewing through them, undeterred by the decoys. Throughout the turmoil, Iris fell, her leg injured. She struggled to stand as the monster's jaws loomed dangerously close. The monster bared its fangs, growling as it closed in for the kill, gazes fixed on its prey. Iris lay below it, frozen in terror. The quick teeth overhead her reflected the hopelessness of her situation. Fear consumed her. Recollections surfaced, days when she was belittled and rejected, asking now if this was truly her end. In that scene, she recalled Lloyd's apology and the words of somebody who previously believed in her potential. Tears welled in her eyes. Screaming using panic, she raised her blade, driving it upward inside the monster's mouth as its jaws descended upon her. Driven by panic and ego, Iris shouted out her resolve. If Lloyd could gather materials, then so could she. Using the beast eventually slain, Black Crow handed her a fang, one of the exact items they had been through to retrieve. Deceiving in the snow, Iris weakly chuckled and mumbled her single desire to take a bath. Rest, however, was yet far away. Elsewhere, Lloyd and the companions crossed the frontier safely. A new plan had begun to take shape among them. With a shining item box in palm, Lloyd was wondered about his tactic to stop the prince. His answer had just begun. Lloyd boldly proposed placing the prince within the item box to imprisonment and bring him back alive. Shocking all in the chamber. Regardless doubts, he stated that the box was safe. He had even slept within it. The companions struggled to grasp the odd strategy. Whereas quiet remained, one girl broke it with quiet approval. The strange idea just might succeed. Several might use item boxes, and none would imagine they could be cast for abduction, making it the perfect, unpredictable tactic. He grinned boldly, announcing they'd use the prince as leverage for calm talks with Melzeria. The plan was now in motion. With determination in her tone, the woman stated they would now lead the operation, reclaiming control of their homeland. Joined. The team set unaware through the snowy terrain, unaware of the shining eyes watching from afar. Ezekiel, feeling their movement through sorcery, smirked coldly. She previously saw them as pests needing to be crushed. An unusual enchanted beast showed before the team, its eerie form sparking questions. Standing silently, the lady held in her surroundings. Her gaze remained on the cathedral ahead, as she reflected on her return, a place once familiar. Overhead them appeared the cathedral, enormous and imposing. Lacking delay, the group advanced toward its gates, their steps echoing on the stone path. Deep within the castle, a sorceress received pressing report. Her summoned beast had fallen, and enemies were already inside. Anger flared in her gazes as she shouted requests. Refusing to tolerate loss, she demanded the intruders be eliminated without mercy. Lloyd ready a mighty spell, offering to pause through the defenses with an explosion. Tension appeared as Lloyd insisted on going ahead. Regardless warnings from the others, he remained focused on defeating the guards blocking their path. Alarm struck Iris as she scolded him. She reminded Lloyd that not all was built for high-level battle like Dandelion or Black Crow. Even with enhancements, the sorcery he wielded was dangerously deadly. A misplaced blast could easily result in death, shocking Lloyd into delay, scolded further. He was told never to use it if he couldn't command it. Alternative ideas like plant sorcery were taken up, but stealth stayed a concern. His experience in remote resource gathering made his approach wildly different beyond the companions, cautioning the team. One member reminded all they weren't there to provoke a conflict. Stealth was the priority, not open conflict. Suddenly, one of them snuck unaware. When discovered, she was previously stuffing her embrace with supplies, making a frantic outburst from her teammate. The team stumbled upon a meal storage area. Regardless of stockpile, they were staggered to hear that their provisions had already run out. Realizing the need for a safer route, they regrouped. Two leapt finished the wall, whereas companions scouted a calmer path, where security was thin. Within the cathedral, patrolling guards reminded each other to stay cautious. Any careless action could reveal them all. Lloyd's possession of the item box was crucial to the mission. One teammate whispered regarding finding sorcery to help those slip by undetected. Their disguise was rapidly tested. A robed official confronted them, questioning their location and calling. The team froze under strain, thinking rapidly. They stated to be responding to a library disturbance. Their bluff surprisingly worked, and the official provided to guide them. As discussion shifted to reports about the intruders, the team understood they needed a convincing excuse to slip away unnoticed. Reports grew among the guards about two feared warriors Isolde, called for her brute power, and Sephiria, infamous for her recklessness. Within the fortress, officials whispered which these very two had previously driven the former saint to madness. Their names stirred unease. Lacking notice, sorcery rose. A massive spell, Ice Spear, launched enemies into the air, shaking the halls with its force. Elsewhere, Iris silently higher. A subordinate noticed her odd demeanor but hesitated to question her sudden resolve. Though one soldier had previously fallen, Iris stayed composed. Confident, she trusted the castle's maze of beasts would trap the intruders. A horde of enchanted beasts was commanded to assault, driven by vengeance for their downed brethren. Standing firm, one warrior moved ahead, saying responsibility for the monsters. Around him, the aftermath of a fierce battle lay in silence. Greater within, the team discovered imprisoned guild members. Recognition dawned as one called out to Isolde from behind the bars. The captives stated they were taken, whereas working near the frontier, treated as expendable. They were left to die in monster-infested zones. Turmoil grew as citizens were ushered to security. Witnessing the prince's surprising actions, Iris gazed in disbelief at the unfolding situation. Beyond a strong door, voices confirmed people were trapped within. As the entrance was compelled open, frightened citizens poured out, thankful for rescue. Inside the structure, they discovered a frail child leap in chains. Her appearance stopped all cold. Recognizing her as the outside mage, the knights were horrified by the abuse. Though yet alive, she was on the brink and needed pressing care. Tears welled in one soldier's gazes. Regret tore across her. This should not ever have happened under her watch. Lloyd understood the prince's actions had gone too far. If left unchecked, numerous companions would continue to suffer. Alarms rang out as the team was spotted. Soldiers and beasts quickly surrounded them, cutting unaware escape. Reacting fast, Isolde and her companions sprinted in a different direction, starting air sorcery to draw enemy attention away from the others. Whereas the diversion unfolded, Iris turned to Lloyd. Jointly, they prepared to unleash a potent display of plant sorcery against the prince's forces. At the cathedral's entrance, the spell started to take form. Sorcery rose below their hands, aiming to break through the final stronghold within. Iris faced the prince, beaten and humiliated. She offered a bitter apology. Ezekiel had failed to halt them. Prince Geese remained boldly before his elite unit, the Holy Flame Knights. With their unmatched power, he believed no one could reach the cathedral. He boasted of one impenetrable formation and a bridge vulnerable to ranged protection, swearing no intruder might pass. Suddenly, turmoil burst. Enormous vines burst through the ground, overwhelming the formation and lifting soldiers into the air. The cathedral itself became entangled, vines encasing it from each together. Stun and confusion spread among the defenders. From within the turmoil, Iris and Lloyd moved forth. Calm and resolute, they required Prince Geese surrender. No one could protect him now. Prince Geese, surprised by Iris's arrival, doubted her motives. He stated their actions were arrogant and misguided. Enraged, he accused them of weakening humanity and giving fiends an edge. Iris remained firm, naming his justification a mere pretense. She stated their mission was to defend the people. For Iris, this was not rebellion, it was the duty of a genuine saint. Using unwavering resolve, she challenged him directly. If he sought to rule through force, he would have to lose her initial, accepting the challenge. Iris higher, peaceful and resolute, she vowed to bring him down personally. Lloyd moved ahead, ready to confront the prince, as the current saint. He prepared to halt everything with his own power. Within the damaged cathedral, Iris and Lloyd confront the prince and his escorts. An enraged official requires an account for Iris's allegiance to a suspicious mage. A stern lady steps ahead, identifying Iris as a fake and charging her of betrayal. She reveals her aim to eliminate the imposter. With a smug look, the lady dismisses Lloyd's efforts, saying he stands out too much and must be dealt with immediately. She launches Delta Stream, one devastating air spell. Lloyd remains composed, analyzing this oncoming force. In response, he activates Force Shield. Elsewhere, this blast shakes the cathedral, startling those beyond. Overhead this capital walls, the cathedral's upper structure begins to tilt dangerously as the vines anchoring it tear apart. Chunks of stone paws away from the collapsing spire, plummeting toward the ground and making witnesses in shock. A figure proclaims the immense power of Ezekiel, certain which even Lloyd won't be able to counter the destruction. Different observer, shocked by the display, reluctantly admits the scale of the harm was impressive. Lloyd steps ahead, unfazed, conjuring Cyclone to push again the threat and shield Iris beyond harm. The enemy marvels at the clash, showing interest as Lloyd activates bodily boost to fulfill the threat head-on. Taking advantage of a scene's distraction, Iris prepares a counterattack from behind, her victim unaware of the threat overhead. Sorcery erupts as pair sides release their spells. Fireball crashes versus Ice Spear. Iris makes her intent clear through action. Compelled into a corner, the rival retaliates with a barrage of water bullet, announcing no other option remains. In response, Iris summons an enormous water dragon, immense her foe and facing the tide of battle. Following unleashing powerful sorcery, Iris admits its toll. Exhausted, she knows she won't be able to use it again soon. Her rival lashes out in irritation, charging Iris of single, ever listening to Lloyd, while ignoring his own voice and words. A flashback reveals Iris standing in a grand cathedral. A priest asks if she's ready to devote personally to holy service. Using determination, Iris pledges to protect the weak and bring justice. The priest commands her to purge the country of evil. Afterward, Iris is escorted through the church grounds. A lady named Teruru welcomes her and gives to help with daily needs. Iris is dazzled by her fresh surroundings, overcome by the beauty and size of the sanctuary, her joy glowing through. Witnesses, shocked by her casual demeanor, whisper doubts about herself, asking if this cheerful girl is truly the nation's saint. Afterward, her compassion shows as she shares her desire for all to enjoy a meal like her mother previously made, bringing warmth to those around her. Aya, enraged outburst, accuses Iris of misunderstanding, mocking her respect for her mother, and naming her a Nafe child. The outcry deepens. Regardless, doing nothing unique, she was appreciated, and that, further than anything, fuels resentment from those who feel overlooked. Lloyd pieces together Nero's motives, whereas turmoil erupts behind him. An unexpected blow from an enraged enemy interrupts the moment. Blinded by resentment, the attacker lashes out, naming Iris ignorant. She dismisses his remarks, announcing his story irrelevant. Now in the ruins of a temple, Iris reflects on a history mission. She hadn't understood the threat of weakened holy power until it was too late. A warrior, humbled, thanks Iris for saving the region. She humbly defers, saying it was simply portion of her duty. Lacking pause, the warrior rushes unaware, ready to protect the next holy site, all made possible by Iris's quiet support. Within battle, an enraged enemy denounces Iris, charging her of lacking the awareness expected of a saint. In a calmer scene, he reveals his reason: fiends took his father, and he seeks to unite lands for protection through expansion. Iris challenges his scheme, questioning his intent to annex companions. She warns that such actions will divide humanity, mirroring the fiend's cruelty. The prince explodes in anger, yelling which Iris knows nothing of national burdens. Her opposition strikes at his ego and duty. Driven by anger, he unleashes an assault, naming her arrogant and regarding her as a self-righteous child unfit to judge him. Iris collapses after the assault, her allies rushing to her together. The prince pauses, regret flickering across his face as he processes the aftermath. Regardless this agony, Iris speaks up. She insists her perspective is shaped by simple roots, not power, but experience and instinct. Tensions rise as she accuses him of driving her away. The prince, hit by realization, admits fault for everything which happened. With renewed resolve, Iris casts Water Dragon, shouting her genuine calling. She returned not to fight, but to halt him. The spell engulfs him open retreat. From underneath, Lloyd and companions watch as the enormous force lifts the prince into the air. With power surging through him, Lloyd activates super bodily boost and strikes ahead, leaping to intercept the threat and protect everyone below. The conflict ends with success. Holding a secured artifact chest, Lloyd celebrates, shocked and relieved that his effort paid unaware. From throughout the debris, he calls to Iris. She looks up surprised, their gazes meeting throughout the ruined battleground. As they reunite, she asks if he's all right. Lloyd smiles awkwardly, confessing the events trapped him unaware protector. But he is okay, ashamed. Iris hides her confront, apologizing for her emotional outburst. Lloyd is left silent as she flusters finished being seen so vulnerable. Lloyd gives a smile, confessing he often acts foolish. His words softly disarm Iris, who looks on shocked and silent. He confesses which seeing her imperfections comforts him. For previously, Iris realizes she doesn't have to bear the weight of perfection solitary. Elsewhere, fresh travelers return from the snowy mountains. One of them manages to gather uncommon materials, but worry lingers in her gazes. Increasing unease spreads. One woman voices a grim seeming about the gathered resources, sensing something unnatural in their presence. Their fear is confirmed as the enormous, grotesque beast emerges. The lofty beast roars, casting a shadow finish the stunned party. The team faces the monstrous threat in alarm. With no scheme and no weapon strong enough, they're frozen by fear and confusion. As the beasts march ahead, a fresh worry arises. Are these creatures heading straight for Roland, the capital city? A merciless lady towered overhead her fallen rival, declaring her too weak to continue. Clutching her injured together, the beaten mage gritted her teeth. She had clearly misjudged Lloyd's power and tactics. Winning in her current state was impossible. Far from the battle, Lloyd inspected the aftermath with composure. The item box had rushed from overuse, whereas the Water Dragon's loss indicated merely how far things had escalated. Contingency plans were previously in movement as summoned beasts appeared. Realizing the danger, she made a desperate decision to retreat. Whatever truly shook her, nevertheless, was the sight of a companion injured. Even one of her strongest had fallen from overhead. A fierce figure descended like a meteor. Her status was commanding, and her demand was clear. She wished the injured woman. Her tone turned cold as she rejected the prince as useless. The woman, however, carried significant value. She issued an ultimatum. Lloyd remained shocked by the request. His companion refused without hesitation, unwilling to surrender a vulnerable child. Irritation flared finished. Gripping her horn, the lady cursed the situation. With no other option, she prepared to unleash hidden power. A transformation started. Sorcery rose as horns grew. The air thickened with danger. Her transformation total, the lady now remained as a fearsome demon. All trace of restraint vanished. She had made her decision. The onlookers reeled in amazement. None could reconcile her monstrous form with the saintly scene they previously believed in. Even the prince looked shaken. Lacking notice, she launched personally skyward, then crashed down with devastating force. The ground shattered, sending shockwaves through the area. Raising her clawed palm, she stated her purpose. No one would leave alive. Her wrath was absolute. In response, an enormous explosion spell kindled a desperate effort to halt her rampage. Deafening explosion burst overhead the capital, shaking the skies and tearing through the clouds with blinding force. Debris strewn in all directions. Lloyd shielded his allies, rod in palm, bracing against the violent blast. The stun didn't end there. A companion exclaimed in amazement. Her sorcery rivaled Lloyd's. He remained stunned, realizing the scale of her power. Hovering overhead them, the demon lady radiated overwhelming power. Her dominance was undeniable. She charged again. Beyond the sky, she crashed inside the ground with brutal force. The battlefield cracked under the weight of their escalating clash. The collision continued with devastating force. She lunged again, tearing through walls and shaking the entire battlefield. Destruction grew lacking pause. Now standing apart, the two faced unaware, using mutual recognition. Even the bystanders could tell these two were fighting on an utterly different level. Curious, she doubted Lloyd's power for somebody human. His abilities were far beyond normal. He simply replied that he assembled materials. Skepticism turned to interest. He spoke of uncommon ingredients found single in remote areas, as if it explained everything. Her look softened. She confessed with a smile she had been practiced there all along. Surprised by her background, the companions doubted why she had trained in such a perilous position. She grinned, remembering someone else who had done the same. A flashback explained her genuine allegiance, the initial subordinate of the Demon Lord. Her philosophy was clear raw power. Must triumph finish courage. Years previous, she had been directed to train in the lethal white sand dunes for 1,000 years. Regardless objections, her weakness left no chamber for refusal. Terrified by this threat, she protested, yet her superior silenced her. This wasn't a choice, it was destiny. Reflecting on her ordeal, she recalled surviving barely each day. This same hell which nearly broke her had also shaped Lloyd. Finished moment, her hatred for the Demon Lord festered. Compelled to survive by consuming beasts, her only thought was revenge for her suffering. Regardless her devotion, the reward for her endurance was empty. The Demon Lord offered her a position on the front lines, but her chest had much turned cold. When the hero weakened her superior, she held the opportunity to blow from behind, seizing the chance to imprisonment her. Opposite to mortal belief, the fallen figure wasn't a standing saint, she was the Demon Lord's shadow. She had served amid mortals, impersonated the scientist, and plotted her return from within. An interrogate was raised why take on the role of the Demon Lord. Her response was quick destruction was simply a demon's duty. With fury in her tone, she stated her intent to surpass the Demon Lord personally. Vengeance would be her route to power. Her tactic relied not on power solitary, but cunning. Through manipulation and command, she vowed to erase her master's legacy completely. Yet Lloyd called her out. Deceiving this prince and harming innocents for revenge was one cruel route. Using Ruby for selfish gain crossed the line, which he might never pardon. Ezekiel voiced disappointment. She had hoped Lloyd might understand her reasons, but plainly he never did. With a strong breath she confessed loss. Her carefully laid plans had failed. Lloyd had thrown everything into disarray. Although worn and weakened, she wasn't finished. If calm couldn't be arrived, at then power would decide the outcome. A fresh statement came she would carry her ambitions to the next land. Her goals remained unchanged. But initial, she promised one last serve of destruction. All standing before her would be buried before she touched on. An eerie change had consumed the Roland region, now dominated by monstrous vegetation and lofty beasts. Threat loomed closer, pressing haste on the team. Reaching home felt unthinkable amid the turmoil, especially under the unblinking gaze of a shadowy predator observing from afar. With a deafening cry, an enormous owl-like beast lunged. Instinctively, they recoiled, narrowly dodging as fear rose through their bodies. Wishing for a counterattack, one begged for sorcery aid, but Lloyd shook his head. Success against one beast would be meaningless with others waiting to strike. Resigned to the inevitable, they made their retreat. Materials and palm were abandoned as survival held priority finished any mission goal. A solemn pact was made as swords and staves were raised high. Each warrior pledged to confront the coming conflict, using unwavering resolve. Lloyd moved ahead, confronting the colossal beast lacking flinching. Determination hardened his gaze. Protecting the woman behind him became his single focus as he remained against the enemy's demand. High overhead, the Demon Lord issued her command. Her confidence grew as she directed her minions to blow down the lone obstacle before them. A hexagonal shield flared to existence. The Demon Lord taunted, using her power to regenerate endlessly, confident that no opposition could endure. Twin dragon-like beasts unleashed a devastating barrage. Their breath hit using explosive force, engulfing the close structure in flame and smoke. From a distance, the cathedral arrived into sight, partially destroyed. Witnesses noted the fall of its defenses, acknowledging Lloyd's inexperience in such harsh terrain. Stun grew throughout the Demon Lord's confront. A strange formation began taking shape in the skies behind her as the battle's momentum shifted. Lacking notice, a chain of enchanted detonations burst across the battlefield. 16 precise explosions hammered down, shaking both ground and enemy alike. Whereas Lloyd's power defied hopes, the Demon Lord mocked the idea of shielding an entire cathedral with mere mortal practice. An unexpected notice rang out, but Lloyd was previously in movement. Two monstrous beasts crashed through the ground, making him to activate his barrier just in time. The skirmish deepened as a companion intervened, casting a spell to desire one of the creatures back. In the aftermath, Lloyd accepted the aid with gratitude. Mocking giggles resounded as the Demon Lord unleashed different wave of threats. Whereas Lloyd soared into action, recollections of history failure resurfaced. The Demon Lord's taunts dug deep, reminding him of bitter seconds in the sand dunes. From the darkness ahead, grotesque monstrosities loomed. Solitary and surrounded, Lloyd remained firm as unnatural horrors closed in, ready to blow. Enormous explosion tore through the capital skies, its scale making onlookers shocked. Fear rose as citizens questioned what kind of enemy Lloyd was up against. Elsewhere, huge owl-like beasts stormed through the streets. Ezekiel's summoned familiars rampaged unchecked, scattering defenders in alarm. The turmoil deepened as an enormous beast crashed into the battlefield. Towering over the ruins, it radiated raw menace. Beyond overhead, a warrior descended in a blur of speed. A blinding slash hit the beast as the technique flashblade cut deep into its flank. Regardless the forceful assault, the beast's defenses carried. Magic resistance flared, and the warriors realized they were facing a truly formidable opponent. With synchronized movement, the duo launched into their technique double-fang sword. Their blades aimed genuine as they charged together, ready to display their concealed practice. Open assault. Sephilia suddenly bit Isolde. The sudden snack halted their formation, leaving both off balance and stunned. Falling into turmoil, Isolde shared her irritation. The coordinated blow collapsed, while a monstrous threat loomed nearby, roaring across the battlefield. In the aftermath, a discussion burst. Sephilia sheepishly confessed she was sidetracked by the scent of sweets, despite everyone's disbelief and concern. Resolved to restore focus, Isolde made a promise. Previously, the battle stopped. She'd bake a huge cake as motivation, and as a truce. Using Lloyd weakened, they unleashed their strongest push double-fang sword technique rakeage combo, slicing across the monstrous swarm. Wary as turmoil burst around them, Isolde rallied companions to embrace. Her commanding voice cut through panic, urging holy knights to take up their weapons and fight back. One of her beasts had downed, and Lloyd recognized the signature teamwork of Isolde and Sephilia. As enchanted barriers flickered, worry crept in. A lone warrior faced immense odds, and allies could single watch, frustrated at their own limitations. Yet, against all odds, a piercing blow landed. The beast dropped instantly, and the shocked woman remained victorious, her courage shining brighter than any spell. Merely as the battle deepened, a surprising ally arrived, bizarre in form. Yet full of confidence, the odd arrival darted ahead, but quickly yelped in pain, flames licking its body. Its distraction turned enemies a momentary advantage, making all puzzled. Beyond inside the singed form, Lyra and Mars tumbled out, showing they'd stowed away in Lloyd's item box. As they stated, the pair had fled the previous crisis during the confusion. Companions, too, had barely survived the chaos, and now sought to reunite. Further surprising allies charged into battle. One bellowed a fierce war cry, ready to try a fresh ability, proving they weren't the single ones eager to help. Reinforcements beyond the Explorers Guild joined the fray. Though the Demon Lords scoffed at their numbers, their arrival reignited optimism among the defenders. Isolde and Sephilia struck again with synchronized accuracy. Their rakeage combo tore through enemy ranks, making even seasoned enemies to take them seriously. As the battle grew, commands rang out. Lloyd called for a coordinated assault, whereas companions touched to delay Ezekiel. The tide was shifting. On opposite flanks, spells and swordplay clashed. Ice Spear flew beside twin blade strikes, pressuring the opponent's defenses beyond all directions. Lloyd closed in, unleashing double quiet sorcery. His unexpected blow silenced the Demon Lord's incantation, catching her completely off guard. He stated he was no longer the isolated mage wandering the dunes now. He had companions at his together. In unison, his allies rose ahead. Each one, bruised but unyielding, fought with spent resolve together. They faced the Demon Lord without hesitation. With all power determined, Lloyd unleashed a devastating blast. The explosion carved the sky with radiant force, hammering down on his victim. As the smoke cleared, the enemy staggered. Lloyd's spell had landed genuine, earning an uncommon scene of triumph amidst the destruction. Encircled by fallen minions and mounting losses, the Demon Lord faltered. Doubt clouded her mind. Retreat was unthinkable, but loss was looming. The Demon Lord remained frozen, haunted by echoes of a history calamity. The monstrous status before her resembled a disaster she had witnessed long ago, snapped from her mind by a quick tone. She turned, visibly shaken. The illusion of control was crumbling. Close companions struggled to recover, bruised yet breathing. They slowly regained awareness, searching for signs of Lloyd. When Lloyd showed, his gazes met Ruby's twisted smile. The reunion arrived under grim circumstances, shrouded in dread. Lloyd suddenly encountered Ruby in front of an enormous structure, her look twisted in disbelief at his sudden appearance. Ruby confronted him about his disappearance. Her anger grew as she recalled how he left lacking notice, abandoning their spent labor at the atelier. She vented her irritation, remembering how her existence had turned chaotic ever since he walked away. Lloyd stood stunned by her outburst. Suddenly, Ruby was launched through the sky by a powerful force. A lofty elf quietly praised her for retrieving uncommon materials. The elf remained firm, wielding a shining pot and an artifact. A odd ritual had started, and the atmosphere shifted with tension. She explained her purpose to repurpose it for travel, although its power was clearly destructive. Power rose as she started the device using the bodies of fallen beasts. The others grew alarmed, preparing to intervene before it was too late. Using a twisted smile, she placed the crown on her head. The alchemy item, designed for dimensional transport, pulsed using unstable sorcery. The team launched a combined sword technique to disrupt the ritual. Blades clashed with violent force against the expanding power surge. As the smoke settled, the battlefield lay in destroy. Lloyd and the companions searched frantically for Ezekiel, but her presence had vanished completely. An enormous sorcery circle appeared on the ground, radiating severe energy. The structure beneath began to fracture under the force. Witnessing the phenomenon, Lloyd pressed all to flee. At the same moment, companions noticed the sudden disappearance of magical creatures. He rapidly identified the circle as a teleportation device, carefully resembling one they had previously cast at the atelier. Different teams spotted a signal in the distance. They understood that Ezekiel had successfully escaped through the magical transfer. Far away, one ominous tremor shook the landscape. A dark root-covered fortress started to rise below a mountain's trembling surface. Lloyd stated that the mana from all the vanished beasts had been absorbed into an enormous convergence. The enchanted surge distorted the surroundings. A monstrous form appeared, showing itself as Ezekiel fused with the beasts. The grotesque entity roared with overwhelming power, stunning all. She criticized Lloyd for siding with mortals, blaming him for her capture and transformation. Ignoring his remarks, Ezekiel lashed out in fury. Her appearance, now warped and frightening, amplified her hatred and anguish. Announcing her form a weapon of vengeance, she vowed to destroy the order that previously bound her, shifting her wrath toward Lloyd's resolve. Lloyd conjured a force shield, bracing versus Ezekiel's monstrous assault. Her tone thundered with fault, demanding his disappearance. The shield started to crack under the immense strain. Sorcery clashed against chaos, shattering the ground between them. Witnesses grew alarmed as the barrier showed signs of breaking. Lloyd's look tightened, feeling the strain pushing him to his limits. Acknowledging the power gap, he confessed he couldn't survive her with sorcery solitary. His tone held both apology and urgency. As the shield started to fall and companions showed beside him together, they faced Ezekiel, preparing for a decisive stand. Ezekiel rejected Iris's holy sorcery as weak, mocking her dedication regardless her saintly practice. The tension among the defenders grew. Lloyd and his allies understood the holy sorcery could not affect Ezekiel directly, but it could weaken the fused beasts within her. Learning the temple was past the distant mountains, one member moved ahead, confident in her ability to reach it with haste. He turned to the team with haste, requesting 5 seconds. He needed a moment to release the shield and ready a counterattack. With determination, Iris and the companions accepted the task. They prepared to hold the line, giving Lloyd the critical seconds he wondered for. Electricity crackled as one warrior charged through the smoke. Her body rose ahead, risking everything in a daring shock assault. Using swords drawn, she hit Ezekiel head-on. The impact was fierce, making the beast to flinch and react defensively. In counterattack, Ezekiel seized a companion and hurled them skyward. Her tone promised to incinerate each one of Lloyd's companions. Hovering midair, the woman shouted for Lloyd to serve. Gripping his rod, he turned silent thanks and readied the counterattack. Nature responded to his spell. Vines burst beyond the earth, binding Ezekiel in a flurry of enchanted roots and restraint. A lofty structure shot through the heavens like a holy projectile. Roland's holy temple hurtled straight toward Ezekiel's body. Witnesses gasped in amazement. Lloyd had weaponized the entire temple, stunning allies and enemies equally with the sheer scale of the assault. Empowered by a bodily boost spell, Lloyd carried Iris in his embrace. They braced together for their final push, leaping ahead with accuracy. He closed in on the bound enemy. Ezekiel, pinned by holy force, had no room to evade. Lloyd and Iris plunged into the temple's core. Its old sorcery responded to their status, chance a path to the heart of the spell. Within the ruined temple, Lloyd guided Iris to the holy circle. With steady resolve, she moved ahead, prepared to begin the ritual. Together, they made their stand. Iris started chanting as Lloyd remained protector beside her, ready to bring the last conflict to a close. A radiant rush of light engulfed the room. The holy power rose outward from Iris, shaking the entire temple with its force. Ezekiel's form started to destabilize. The fused beasts within her writhed in pain as their power drained away. Whereas Ezekiel let out an enraged growl, Those observing from beyond the temple realized the tide had finally begun to turn. Lloyd raised his rod as holy power rose behind him. The magical blast collided with Ezekiel, tearing through the corrupted form. Using unwavering focus, he carried his position. The scene was critical, he couldn't afford to hesitate. An explosive rush of light burst throughout the battlefield. The ritual circle overhead completed its cast, engulfing Ezekiel in searing holy power. Fragments of her gigantic form disintegrated mid-air. The fusion unraveled, making onlookers in amazement at the overwhelming force. As the smoke settled, Lloyd remained beside Iris at the crater's edge. With a faint smile, he accepted how close the outcome had been. Iris abruptly embraced him. Her surprising action left him shocked and blushing. Tears covered her gazes as she praised him for standing by her together and protecting both her and her people through the chaos. Lloyd grinned kindly in response. Behind him, the damaged temple remained towering as a quiet reminder of what they'd overcome together. Far from their sight, Ezekiel clawed her route through the rubble. Though defeated, her resolve stayed unbroken. Clutching a shard of power, she vowed to rise again. With a scheme to use the remaining beasts, she whispered a fresh threat. Ruby moved ahead with determination. Ezekiel, weakened and cornered, gazed up. A final confrontation between the two was inevitable. Ruby confronts one familiar confront buried in the sand, a former slave beaten by Lloyd. The rival reveals the crown's frightening ability to fuse with beasts. Notice that even now, she holds enough power to destroy Ruby instantly. Observing from the together, different character finds the idea clever and surprising. Ruby acknowledges the creativity with a mix of interest and caution. Giggles erupts during the scuffle finished an alchemy pot. The enemy dismisses any opposition, saying her tools are useless against humans. Instead than retreat, Ruby steps ahead. She remembers each detail of the previous process and prepares to replicate it on her own. Kneeling finished the alchemy pot. Ruby adjusted the remaining materials with quick accuracy, her eyes sharpened with intent. Lifting the demonic crown, she repurposed the tool with a firm grip. Stun grew throughout her enemy's confront as the implications sank in, instead than hesitate. Ruby proclaimed herself as the city's genius chemist. She stated her intent to push the limits of what humans could wield. An unexpected explosion of power rose upward. Blinding onlookers, the spectacle left distant witnesses speechless. From a close hill, Lloyd rushed ahead. Surveying the devastation, he called out to check on all's safety. After the explosion, Lloyd tended to the wounded as companions offered healing sorcery. Praise was spent, but his mind remained elsewhere. A strong-seeming settled finished him. Regardless the momentary calm, he sensed something was still wrong and prepared to search for Ruby. Darkness started to form overhead the ruined spire, coalescing into a massive, ominous shape with glowing eyes. The ground trembled. Fear grew as a frightening surge of enchanted energy surged forth. Someone shouted Ezekiel's name in panic. From the storm of turmoil appeared a monstrous figure, its twisted confront screaming Lloyd's name, demanding he show himself. Lloyd froze as he saw Ruby's gigantic change. Her features were warped past recognition, striking fear even among allies. An enraged threat resounded throughout the country. Ruby vowed to destroy the entire country if Lloyd refused to face her. In the distance, a mountain range was torn apart by her blast. Witnesses might single stare in amazement at the overwhelming force. Resolved to end the turmoil, Lloyd moved ahead. Ruby's twisted grin widened as she declared her revenge would begin with him. He called out to her, demanding responses, but she single looked below on him with cruel amusement. Ruby stated her intent to pause Lloyd's spirit, imagining him begging to never leave her again. Companions doubted if becoming a monster was needed for that. One of Lloyd's companions defended him, citing his role in saving the country. Ruby rejected the praise with contempt, unwilling to learn reason. She lashed out, saying Lloyd not ever understood her. Attempts to encourage communication were refused with bitter outbursts. Lloyd fought back, insisting he knew her more than anyone. Their spent history at the orphanage strengthened his resolve. To her, Lloyd was merely a foolish mage, barely value-saving. The companions finally saw her true self. One of Ruby's allies accepted her contempt, confessing that even she once saw Lloyd as unstable and dangerous. Moment, however, had changed her perspective. A peaceful realization cleared through Lloyd as he heard her words. Experience had shaped him. Across numerous trials, he grew into an able and trusted adventurer. Companions chimed in, remembering his history victories and unselfish actions. Even his cooking earned a smile from those around him. Observing from the together, different women reflected on Ruby's descent. Despite her monstrous power, she seemed more pitiful than terrifying. Ruby shouted in irritation, unwilling to believe that somebody like Lloyd could truly change. Her anger masked something deeply sorrowful. Wild taunts burst from her. She mocked those defending him, naming them blind fools taken in by lies. In quiet, Lloyd processed the outburst. For a scene, he questioned if their bond had ever been real. She accused him of acting out one childish game, regarding his friendships while meaningless and fake. Lacking different word, Lloyd charged ahead. A single explosive punch silenced her fury and shook the battlefield. A devastating blow hurled Ruby throughout the battlefield. Blasts rocked the ground as smoke and debris erupted into the sky. Surrounded by the aftermath, Lloyd remained quietly. A storm swirled around him as he thought on the cruel words he had endured. Raising his tone, he stated his pain and his ego. No one would be allowed to mock the bonds he had formed. Those observing could hardly believe it for the initial moment. They saw his anger unleashed, pure and unshaken. Ruby gazed back, her monstrous confront twisted not merely in rage but in disbelief. She trembled but remained her earth. Regardless everything, she chose to resist him with all her power. Unable to accept his change, Lloyd clenched his fists, encircled by tension and resolve. He prepared to end the clash lacking delay. The ground split open as a monstrous beast lunged ahead, its gaping mouth snapping wildly. Ruby and Lloyd were hurled into the sky by the force of the assault. Standing his earth, Lloyd glared ahead with resistance. Bloodied but unwavering, he braced himself to retaliate against the turmoil. Elsewhere, a young woman frowned at her food. Regardless its warmth, the pot au feu only deepened her displeasure. In a peaceful hall, Catherine introduced personally, earning praise as a daughter and a devoted disciple. Applause resounded through the chamber as townsfolk voiced their gratitude, honoring Catherine's efforts in silence and smiles. Ruby sat in quiet, masking her bitterness as companions laughed and spent their food inside. Resentment festered at being treated as lesser. Practice sessions continued under strict requests. Whereas companions followed out of duty, Lloyd responded with sincere effort, gaining unexpected praise. Reports grew quickly. He had been practicing non-stop. Day after day, he faced the same boulder, resolved to learn his spell. Beyond the shadows, Ruby observed his struggle. The task seemed impossible, yet his determination not ever wavered. Still, as the years cleared, Lloyd pressed on under moonlight, unwavering in his pursuit of acceptance and power. Lloyd moved ahead, feeling the rising strain from his magic. Hidden nearby, Ruby watched closely, eyes fixed on his movements. A surge of water exploded beyond his spell, crashing with force. Ruby froze, shocked by the sheer power he had eventually achieved. Report of his success grew quickly. Lloyd's dedication had paid unaware, earning praise and the right to enter the Mages Guild. Driven by envy and ambition, Ruby studied late into the evening. She decided to turn the greatest chemist and wanted Lloyd to assist her. With a firm gesture, she stated their partnership. Lloyd, surprised, silently accepted as a fresh bond began to form. In the middle of conflict, Ruby charged ahead, her punch landing with full force. Lloyd came close behind, ready to aid. Amid the turmoil, Lloyd shouted back recollections of hardship, remembering how Ruby once manipulated him into dangerous tasks. The beast mocked Lloyd's motives, regarding his attempts to reconnect. Regardless the taunts, he pressed on, unfazed by the ridicule. Afterward, the two came at their fresh home. It was small and worn, but to them, it was freedom, a position of their own. Wary as Ruby studied paperwork, Lloyd appreciated their hideout, previously feeling at ease, despite her annoyed glare. After passing her chemist exam, Ruby proudly explained their initial official quest. Lloyd, keen and nervous, agreed to give it his all. Excitement turned to tension whenever Ruby's potion was refused. She insisted it was valid, but doubts started to rise. Own merchant mocked her attempt, pointing out one minor flaw. Ruby snapped, but the exchange left her shaken. Afterward, Lloyd said, "Sorry for not meeting hopes, Ruby." Emotional, brushed it off and refused his guilt. Resolved, she vowed to surpass those who mocked them. Lloyd silently consented, moved by her fire and unwavering resolve. Ruby and Lloyd ran together through the peaceful streets, vowing to challenge the elite and never accept loss. As moment cleared, Ruby appeared in status, earning the position of Lady Alchemia. Her pride swelled alongside growing public admiration. One day, a young lady named Catherine neared to provide praise. Ruby accepted the flattery with practiced grace, confident in her increasing standing. She believed she had secured her position. The praise only fueled her ambition. No longer viewing personally as weak, Ruby stated her fresh self, one that demanded respect from those who once dismissed her. Ruby rushed into the chamber, excited to share her latest praise from an aristocratic chemist. Her pride filled every word. Elsewhere, Lloyd stirred a familiar pot. The scent of pot au feu taken back recollections from their orphanage days. Observed silently, surprised by this emotions tied to something so simple. The taste of home hit harder than expected. Regardless, history efforts to forget that existence, Lloyd grinned and offered her a bowl, hopeful to reconnect through the shared past.
But Ruby burst in irritation, shouting her much-carried hatred for the dish. Lloyd stood stunned, unsure how to respond. Irritation exploded between them. Lloyd defended his recollections, whereas Ruby lashed out, dismissing their shared past. Anger grew as accusations flew. Years of misunderstanding and quiet now flared over into harsh words. Iris rushed into the fray, pleading for them to halt. Seeing the threat, companions stepped forward in alarm. Talking using calm power, Iris reminded Ruby of the bonds they'd built. Comradeship, not conflict, had defined their journey. With unwavering gazes, she doubted Ruby's route, challenging her to imagine a future shaped by unity, not bitterness. Following everything, neither of them spoke. Worn and bruised, they remained in quiet, emotions lingering between them. Regardless exhaustion, Lloyd argued ahead. Together, they worked through the evening to light the capital, driven by an ambitious vision. Ruby rejected his worry, though visibly strained. She stayed focused, fueled by a need to see it through. They paused to reflect. Their lives had started in hardship, no family, no wealth, and constant judgment beyond overhead. Facing the rising daylight, Ruby confessed the reality: they had started with nothing. Yet they had each other and their dream. She grew her embrace wide, imagining a city brightened by their efforts. The future, she believed, would be theirs to claim. Throughout the battlefield, Lloyd looked at her, torn between awe and amazement. She had charged ahead, lacking hesitation, mocking remarks spilled from her mouth, old habits surfacing in the heat of tension. Her gazes narrowed with quick intent, yet her anger cracked whenever Lloyd argued back. His stubbornness had always provoked something greater in her. Lacking notice, an enormous blast struck. Ruby staggered, barely able to hold her ground as the smoke rose around her. Ruby soared overhead the shattered cliffs as smoke appeared. Underneath, Lloyd remained still, realizing their conflict had reached its breaking point. Within the fractured hall, conspirators quietly decided the prince's destiny. Using a steady tone, the king entrusted Iris, Lloyd, and their companions with the kingdom's future haunted by regret. The prince accepted his errors. Manipulated by demonic forces, he recognized the lives which could have been lost lacking his allies' intervention. Taking duty, he remained before Iris, confessing his failure to faith. The breach had allowed Ezekiel's manipulation, and now he offered an honest apology. He marveled at the saint's willingness to pardon, knowing several could show such forgiveness after an attempted betrayal. Using tension easing, the team accepted how narrowly they had avoided total war. Regardless the peaceful, Iris couldn't hide her lingering anger toward Ruby. Lloyd, however, reminded her that she had played a larger role than she confessed. Uncertainty remained in Lloyd's tone. He openly confessed that he yet didn't explain how to deal with Ruby's unexpected disappearance and the conflict she had left behind. One chilling thought crept inside their minds. If Ruby ever returned, the collision wouldn't end in dialogue. Recollections of the last confrontation surfaced, a monstrous battle that scarred the very earth. The scale of destruction had never been found in their realm. Childhood rivalries left lasting impressions. Whenever those two clashed, it often stopped in turmoil, but not ever in hatred. Celebration came the tension. Isolde proudly explained a lofty success cake, astonishing everyone with her determination to prepare it. Despite the recent trials, one companion, trying to raise the mood, joked about the departure of Lloyd's childhood companion. His tone was light, unaware of the weight those words carried. Iris suggested that Lloyd could eventually enjoy the quiet existence he always dreamed of. Yet her words stirred something uncertain within him. Where his companion stayed cheerful, Lloyd's mind lingered on Ruby's absence. The idea of never seeing her again haunted him, to all stun. A figure darted through the heavens, slicing through rubble with precision. Cheers burst throughout the square. Citizens and soldiers equally recognized her. The great hero had arrived. With grace and poise, Cornelia Elzobel Quartz, the hero saint of Melzeria, descended. Her unmatched fencing and holy sorcery were revered. The holy sword resonated using her power. She had heard of Lloyd and Iris, their deeds reaching far past the war zone. As she spoke, Cornelia explained the reality behind the war. The fiends had orchestrated everything. Amid them were skilled explorers, a masterful swordsman, a renowned cook, and a humble nun, all vital parts of an unlikely team. To Lloyd's shock, Cornelia turned her praise towards him. She called him the genuine hero, not for titles or lineage. Whispers about Cornelia grew quickly. Some were astonished that Lloyd didn't identify the famed hero saint, renowned for being not single a saint, but a lovely, kind warrior as well. Cornelia spent her source with ego. Born from a lineage of legendary heroes, she had dedicated her existence to training since childhood. Each step of her journey had been for one calling to defend the realm from demonic threats. In a dramatic rush of emotion, Cornelia thrust her blade toward personally, announcing her intent to commit seppuku. Witnessing her extreme serve, the companions remained frozen. Her failure to sense Ezekiel or the Demon King had shattered her confidence as hero saint. making her overwhelmed with guilt. Regardless the commotion, Cornelia quietly explained she had previously healed. Illusion sorcery had hidden the act, and a recovery spell ensured no lasting harm was done. Resolved to atone, she vowed to train even harder. Whereas Cornelia said sorry, Lloyd remained speechless, her intense resolve leaving him utterly intimidated. Using composure regained, Cornelia politely requested custody of this demon king's remains. Cornelia, ever confident, provided to handle the issue of the chemist who fled. Her smile masked the seriousness of her intent, assuring the companions they needn't worry. The fled chemist, now deep in the wildlands, had stolen Ezekiel's power. Lloyd was surprised realizing Cornelia intended to go after Ruby as well. With unwavering resolve, Cornelia stated her duty to imprisonment Ruby. She warned that even history bonds wouldn't halt her. Discussion of banquets and thanks came swiftly. Cornelia's mood shifted as quickly as her priorities. Lloyd, nevertheless, doubted it might end peacefully. Ruby wasn't one to surrender. A storm brewed on the horizon, a collision that seemed inevitable. As the team assembled in quiet, Iris softly called out to Lloyd. He walked ahead with a distant gaze, the weight of latest decisions yet heavy on his shoulders. Making a smile, Lloyd turned and encouraged all to rest. Though exhausted, he chose calm, finished worry, hiding his thoughts behind gentle words. Prior to anyone could leave, an unexpected suggestion broke the tension cake initial. That evening, Lloyd lay in bed, haunted by recollections of Ruby's anger. Her tone resounded in his mind, full of pain and accusation. In his vision, Ruby's confront twisted with irritation. Her words pierced him, an outburst from somebody once close. Anger flared inside Lloyd as he woke, clenching his fist. The lingering weight of Ruby's remarks struck deep, but he lashed back in irritation, equally wounded. A soft knock interrupted his mind. Iris showed at the door, cheerful and curious. Trapped, unaware guard, Lloyd stepped aside as she entered. With a concealed stash of snacks in palm, Iris stated a refreshments party. Her cheeky charm lifted the room, brushing aside the tension that had hung in the air. Finished refreshments and sweets, they thought on the battle. Though calm now, the memory of chaos remained vivid. Jointly, they remembered each wild twist, Ezekiel's transformation, the throne temple, Cornelia's repairs. Regardless everything, she had managed to bridge the gap using the prince, earning his genuine respect. He confessed that lacking her, the outcome could have turned tragic. Her status had steered him away from darker choices, giving him a route that preserved lives. Yet bitterness yet remained. Lloyd remembered how Ruby had mistreated him, driving him away single to chase him down again. Worry crept into his tone. If Cornelia and Ruby met, he feared it would end in tragedy. Single one could survive. A flash of experience surfaced, Ruby resolved and strong. Lloyd's look darkened as Iris silently observed. Both knew that the past wasn't finished with them yet. High overhead the frozen terrain, Cornelia flew at breakneck speed, carrying her shivering passengers through icy winds. Their objections were drowned out by the roar of the sky, determined and unyielding. She stated their mission: locate Ruby, and, if possible, eliminate Ezekiel. Elsewhere, a tone whispered of a darker revelation. Profound within the wildlands, something old had stirred, the spirit dragon had awakened. Using dread in her gazes, the woman warned that a far greater threat loomed. Neither Ruby nor Ezekiel compared to what was coming. A gigantic form appeared beyond darkness. If not stopped, the spirit dragon could erase the continent. Even the demon lord feared its power. A storm was about to begin. In the stillness of evening, she jolted upright, chest racing with haste. The orphanage had become unbearable. Relief finished her, as she noticed her body had returned to normal. Confusion remained, and she questioned if an enchanted item had malfunctioned. An unfamiliar figure showed Ezekiel, a being she had previously merged with. Malice simmered in her tone, as she voiced regret the woman hadn't died during sleep. Suddenly, a lofty beast seized Ezekiel. Her frantic cries pierced the sky as she struggled helplessly in its grasp, shifted to a distant demon folk village. There, old leaders previously loyal to the demon lord remained before her. Ezekiel lashed out at the demon folk nearby her, demanding why they loitered rather of attacking the human realm. Her outburst drew ridicule. The companions mocked her supposed standing, scoffing at her absence of mana. One elder softly reminded her that fighting mortals was no longer allowed. The era of conflict had previously cleared in their peaceful village. A harsh, rocky landscape encircled the settlement. The fairies' mountain range acted as a natural barrier, keeping the mortal realm distant and threat minimal. Wandering in a daze, she thought on where she had stopped up. The fiends here seemed too calm, uninterested in war. Regardless her reluctance, the villagers offered her hot meal. They assured her there was no need to be shy. Any questioning about her history could wait until after the food. A steaming bowl of thick potato soup was placed before her. Ezekiel ate calmly beside her, whereas the woman paused. As she tasted it, mind floated to the human realm. Vegetables like carrots and onions were common there. She longed to experience those flavors. Recollections and fantasy mixed humans and demons alike, enjoying meals together, united by simplicity. Abruptly, she sprang up and bolted. Something stirred within her. This wasn't the moment to stay yet. Fueled by panic, she refused all warnings. Neither beasts nor mountains would halt her. She was resolved to go back and fix what had gone wrong. Facing the wilderness forward, she made her position clear. Dying was preferable to staying with those who turned up. Taunts came her resistance. Ezekiel mocked her, baffled by her loyalty. To her, it was foolishness. Unshaken, she recalled the journey she spent using Lloyd. Together, they had risen from nothing. Everything they achieved was earned. Still so, she confessed Lloyd never saw the value in what they built. His misunderstanding left him open to mistreatment, and he never understood why. She slipped and fell into a pool of slime, alarm gripping her as it clung to her limbs. Trying to rise, she understood she was trapped and helpless. From overhead, Ezekiel shared her contempt. To her, the woman sounded no different from the demon lord full of ego and blind to consequence. But the woman glared again, undeterred. She insisted Ezekiel didn't understand Lloyd, and every Lloyd's power lay in his selflessness. He would risk his existence to protect companions, even at the cost of his grace. Regardless her bitterness, she confessed Lloyd had touched on earning trust, defeating her, and finding a place among humans. Ezekiel's words cut deep. She rejected the woman's beliefs as meaningless, assuring her that Lloyd had touched on and no longer cared. Doubt and amazement flooded the girl's thoughts. Recollections of their spent past clashed with the painful reality of Lloyd walking away with others. As she sank into the slime, panic overcome her. She begged not to be abandoned, naming out to Lloyd with trembling breath. Observing from a distance, Ezekiel stayed silent, the woman's sinking form reflected in her eyes. Then, something changed. Ezekiel remembered the agony of servitude, realizing there was no longer a reason to continue with suffering. A monstrous beast lunged at Ezekiel, making her to jump back. The impact threw her crashing into the swamp, submerged in mud and water. Trying to resurface, she gasped for sky. Her current form felt powerless. Alarm set in as she understood she might drown. Merely in a moment, the swamp beast coiled around her and the unconscious girl, lifting them both out of danger. Back on country, Ezekiel voiced shock at finding the girl in such a pathetic state after her earlier outburst. The team eventually returned to the village. Concerned faces welcomed them, noting their battered spirits and worn-out expressions. As they recovered, a food was ready with fetched water. The large villager offered fish soup, trying to lighten the mood, but the woman seemed distant. Lacking a word, she held a stick and started causing intricate markings beneath the pot. Focus replaced fatigue on her face. Suddenly, flames rose below the cauldron. The onlookers gasped. It was alchemy, a technique several demons understood. Regardless the respect, she rejected them coldly. Pride still held her back from asking for help. Then, her tone shifted. She confessed her origins, her setbacks, and the crime that compelled her into exile. Shame mingled with resolve. The villagers assembled nearby her with respect. No human had ever crossed the fairies' mountain range until now. They praised her perseverance, learning alchemy beyond none, surviving exile, and arriving here showed attempt beyond what most could endure. Touched by their sincerity, she gazed inside the steaming pot of soup. Regardless being human, she was accepted. The warmth of the meal and their acceptance started to soften her guarded heart. As she held a sip, her hands trembled slightly. For the initial moment, she felt the soup hot more than just her body, with peaceful thanks. She looked at the villagers. Their warmth and smiles felt outside but comforting. From a distance, Ezekiel acted indifferent, but companions called her out, teasing her to return for further soup. Her status had previously been noticed. The villagers joked lightheartedly, saying anyone who ate enough could grow big like Ezekiel. Their giggles covered the sky, dispelling any lingering tension. One of those made a vow to transform the village into a paradise that would even make mortals envious. It made her laugh through watery gazes. Elsewhere, a familiar figure grumbled about the hardships of following Ruby, uncertain if it was yet value the trouble. Ruby's confront showed on a wished poster. Labeled a fugitive, she was now hunted across kingdoms, dead or alive. Lloyd returned home, exhausted, single to be welcomed by a demanding chemist immersed in her research. She barely accepted his presence, focused on her documents. Regardless his worn-out appearance, Lloyd responded using a weary smile and accepted her demand. Afterward, a maid neared Lloyd announcing breakfast moment. He responded silently, delaying for a moment as he prepared to move. The maid started maintenance on her enchanted item box. Curiously, it stirred with noise, showing someone hiding inside. To her shock, the box's interior spanned an enormous space. Amid the wide storage, she found personally tumbling and groaning in discomfort. A loud crash resounded as the woman fell on leading of Lloyd, knocking him blank. Embarrassed, she scrambled up, apologizing for the chaos. As they cleaned, she stumbled upon a cup of bubble refreshments. Recognizing it, she grew puzzled. It belonged to somebody surprising. Before she could react, a swirling black vortex appeared. Lloyd shouted a notice, identifying it as a trap that could erase bodily matter. To their stun, the drink was consumed by the void. Lloyd stated he normally avoided using that section during maintenance. Amid floating relics, they found odd scraps and questions arose. Surprisingly, none ever decayed within the item box's storage. Beyond the chamber, companions questioned where Lloyd had gone. One noted that Iris had already gone to retrieve him, yet he was still absent. Approaching the chest cautiously, a woman noticed the lid slightly ajar. Remembering history mishaps, one of them warned how dangerous it had been before. Within the box, Lloyd understood it had been sealed. Iris informed him which, during maintenance, the item box couldn't be opened from within. Elsewhere, suspicions beyond ran wild. One woman imagined the worst and intimate scene unfolding inside the confined space. The idea of the two being solitary stirred alarm, though somebody insisted they could yet hear voices from the chest. As somebody rushed to force open the item box, an unexpected cry from within made Pair Lloyd and Iris yell out in alarm. Elsewhere, an elf archer threatened anyone who attempted to interrupt. She stated the scene developing inside was far too entertaining to ruin. Back within, the chest tipped suddenly. Lloyd and Iris were thrown toward the swirling black hole previously further, panic setting in fast. Thinking quickly, Lloyd summoned an air spell to slow their slip, shielding Iris as they were thrown through the sky together. The crash was rough, but they landed safely. Lloyd checked if Iris was hurt, relieved when she responded with single small humiliation. Wary as inspecting the wreckage, Lloyd discovered the source of the box malfunction. An excessive load jammed into a tight space had broke the system. As rubble shifted, a small bundle tumbled free. Iris wondered about it, and Lloyd suspected the latest impact had dislodged it. In his palm was a refreshments pouch and a crumpled note. The message, demanding refreshments and curry, was from Ruby, recorded with her usual bluntness. Holding the note, Lloyd paused. He started explaining his history, the emotions tied to recollections long buried. His tone softened. Beasts had raised his village, and the orphanage that held him in couldn't rest the sorrow of his lonely childhood. Lloyd recalled how his sorrow and alienation previously consumed him. Ruby's provide to form a team had given him optimism and allowed him to rest at last. Their bond had previously been enough, but finished moment, Ruby's irritation turned into cruelty, and her harshness left deep scars. No, Lloyd confessed he couldn't pardon her. The idea of facing her again covered him with dread. Still so, he didn't want their story to end in resentment. A part of him yet refused to forsake her. Iris, touched by his resolve, reminded him that his kindness had taken Pair power and pain. Sometimes, she said, it is okay to walk away. Talking with calm sincerity, praised Lloyd's unwavering chest. She appreciated how he always searched for the right route, even when uncertain. Her admission left Lloyd shocked, his confront flushed with shock while Iris watched him with composed affection. Elsewhere, beyond the box, turmoil burst. Observers misunderstood the scene, and one girl's wild imagination led her to erupt into a dramatic nosebleed. In the midst of confusion, the item box destabilized again. A vortex formed, pulling all into a whirlwind of alarm and screams. Eventually, they were ejected beyond the box in a drenched heap. Irritation came. Dinner was late. The box had nearly killed them, and tempers flared. As Lloyd lay exhausted, realization struck. Iris loves me. The thought resounded in his thoughts, whereas she quietly handled the chaos around them. He thought on how she had always been there, listening, comforting, and supporting him across his darkest seconds. Suddenly, a maid showed carrying Lloyd finished her shoulder. Her status, cold and effective, brought immediate tension to the room. She stated he had been fleeing from a monstrous threat when she captured him for security. The scene behind her confirmed the alarm. Captured man described traveling using Ruby single to lose track of her, due to her careless pace through the dangerous territory. The report was dire. Ruby had crossed inside the fairy's mountain range, a position infamous for being the most dangerous in the realm. No one could follow her. Regardless, the notice, Lloyd made his decision. He quietly declared he would go look for Ruby himself. The man in the cell worried, dreading Lloyd could finish him unaware. Meanwhile, others nearby reacted with shock at Lloyd's resolve. Lloyd understood the road forward was perilous and reminded all that this wasn't their burden to carry. He voiced uncertainty about what expected, But one thing was clear, he would confront Ruby again, no matter what trials that encounter could bring. With her weapon raised and gazes destroying with emotion, suddenly begged for help, asking somebody to go with her on her path forward. Regardless the threat of powerful beasts, she remained her ground. Instead than accept pity, she lashed out, determined to act instead of waiting. Her intense spirit earned wary respect beyond the odd creatures around her, though they reminded her she wasn't one of them yet. When wondered to start a fire, she obliged calmly. Yet doubt remained. Changing wouldn't be so simple, and she knew it. Ruby and her fresh allies clutched their heads, bracing for whatever crisis was coming next. An eerie sound rolled in beyond the mountains. The heavens shifted to a crimson hue, alarming the close residents. An enormous swarm of beasts rose toward the settlement. Ruby shielded herself as rocks rained down from the sky. In the turmoil, she pressed all to flee. A monstrous force struck beside her, nearly hitting as she turned. Shocked, Ruby froze at the sight of a lofty beast with a skull-like confront looming over the shattered land. From the ruined heavens, an enormous spectral dragon descended, its form lofty over the shattered landscape. Alarm grew as the dragon's source was revealed. It had come from the fairies' mountain range. Among the rubble, Ruby discovered a wounded companion yet breathing. Regardless the previous chaos, the creature remained unfazed by the injury, lacking notice. A horde of strange beasts burst forth as the mountain crumbled apart. The ground shook under their charge. Wary as the dragon feasted on the invading beasts, Ruby held the chance to escape. She fled quickly, guided by instinct and haste. A loud crash burst as something broke free beyond the debris, separating violently from the entity called as Ezekiel. Lacking notice, a warrior descended and pinned Ruby to the ground. Her power and command left no room for resistance. The armored lady stated to have found Ruby, whereas pursuing the fairy dragon haste covered the sky as the threat of the dragon grew. Whereas some planned a royal escort, others focused on immediate action. Recognition struck one of the onlookers as she shouted a name: Albatross. Tension spiked, whereas the companions tried to understand who the unknown figure truly was. A wild team of odd-looking beasts charged into the battlefield, announcing their support for Ruby. Meanwhile, others stayed behind to protect the younger ones. As the threat higher, Ruby's allies tried to hold it unaware. A tense standoff unfolded, with enemies demanding they palm finished Albatross. An unexpected blow shattered the monster ranks. A mighty figure cut through the enemy lines with overwhelming speed and force. Doubt appeared as one warrior confronted a beast she believed to be Ezekiel. Her accusation remembered past schemes of manipulation and betrayal. Lacking delay, she struck down the victim. The monster was impaled, and poetic justice was delivered by one of its own kind. Stun swept throughout Ruby's confront as a strange creature launched itself into the air. The ground cracked violently under its forceful emergence. Amid the turmoil, one companion was pinned and different injured. Regardless her wounds, the demon girl remained conscious, clinging to life. Ruby moved ahead, pleading for the security of her allies. She tried to reason with the approaching threat, identifying her as the hero Cornelia. Cornelia paused, surprised by the sight of mortals and demon folk protecting each other. Confusion started to replace hostility. Suddenly, an enormous crystalline dragon loomed to finish them. All gazes turned upward as the radiant giant descended. The crystal dragon's enormous palm started to tighten, its core shining ominously as it prepared to crush everything within its grasp. Trapped in open sky, Ruby and Cornelia were flung helplessly by the dragon's force. With her blade drawn, Cornelia faced the lofty beast. She hadn't been directed to destroy it, but if needed, she resolved to bring it down personally. In the midst of the turmoil, somebody tossed a lifeline. The team clung to optimism as they struggled to stabilize their fall. Cornelia unleashed her holy technique, surging with holy power. She descended upon the dragon with a brilliant, holy strike. She holy technique struck the dragon directly, but to her stun, it opened its jaws wide and absorbed the power, lacking opposition. Rather of being sealed, the monster consumed the holy power entirely. Cornelia stared in disbelief, her attack rendered completely ineffective. Rubble rained below as the dragon retaliated. Cornelia was slammed to the ground, overcome by the sheer force behind the blow. Rising against the enormous beast, she recognized its genuine nature. This dragon was no normal threat, it was the enemy of all mankind. In the aftermath, the team lay battered. Even such powerful holy power had failed to bring the beast down. Albatross moved ahead with fierce determination, announcing the return of the demon lord. Her status shocked everyone, especially given her youthful appearance. Refusing to back down, Ruby gripped a makeshift weapon. She warned the companions single, those strong enough could wield the sword and survive what arrived next. As threat loomed, a grotesque beast appeared. The blood golem, a monstrous fusion of stitched bodies, remained ready under Ruby's command. Ezekiel was directed into action,
Regardless bitter tension among the team, the battlefield left no room for hesitation. Cornelia held charge, announcing the dragon as the leading priority. Elsewhere, suspicions stirred behind her, raising the threat of betrayal. Ruby tossed a blood bomb toward Ezekiel, urging her to use it. Turmoil burst as pair sides clashed with increasing desperation. Ezekiel faltered, irritation and haste covered the sky, as allies shouted her name, trying to get her back in the fight. Back at camp, tension appeared. Requires for responses compelled a confession from a captured demon folk. The truth about the fairy dragon was no longer avoidable. She consented to talk, prepared to expose all she knew. Her expression hardened as dragons flew across distant skies. A history was unveiled. The demon folk had previously came on the continent, conquering its beasts and reshaping the country with sorcery. Reports had previously surfaced about an unknown status deep below the fairies' mountain range. To many, monsters and demon folk were indistinguishable. That unknown mass, much buried underground, was explained to be the fairy dragon itself, enormous, dormant, and concealed for ages. As an archaeologist, she pieced together the reality from old bones and relics, whereas companions rejected it as a corpse. She believed it was merely sleeping. The dormant dragon had cursed the country, spawning beasts. Unable to generate power on its own, it depended on holy power to thrive, to lure prey. It manipulated conditions to draw in holy power, regardless its toxic effects on beasts and demon folk equally. Whenever the country grew saturated with holy power, the dragon awoke. It swallowed all existence in its path, wiping out entire civilizations, again and again. This repeat cycle explained a grim reality the entire continent offered as a holy power farm to sustain the Fairy King, previously rejected as mere theory. The notice became reality. Knowing the danger, one leader launched a preemptive war. A devastating revelation came: the woman had been created as a countermeasure, a living weapon to stop the dragon's revival. Ruby doubted why the dragon had returned, regardless controlled power use. The response lay in an unusual surge. Remarkable mana had stirred everything into motion. It had been believed that single holy power could wake the dragon, but latest events proved otherwise. A surge of mana during Roland's battle had broke that assumption. Realization dawned: Ruby and her allies may have been this ones who accidentally activated the dragon's awakening. Regardless Cornelia's efforts, her attacks couldn't pause through. The dragon's body stayed unscathed as it started a fearsome counterattack. With a deafening impact, the dragon's fist arrived crashing down, obliterating the earth and all trapped below its shadow. The smoke settled. Bodies lay strewn throughout the battlefield. Ruby stirred, injured and dazed, calling out for her friends. Ruby remained trembling as the dragon loomed overhead. Blaming personally for the turmoil, she struggled to accept the weight of what had unfolded. Panic overtook her as she tried to wake the companions. The threat of being swallowed pushed her into action. The dragon's jaws opened wide, the earth crumbling inside its mouth. Moment was running out. As Ezekiel fell senseless, Albatross trapped her open air, determined to see her mission through. In a crumbling battlefield, a man descends with a destroying presence, resolved to provide his life in exchange for another's recovery. The lady, wounded yet defiant, rejects the gesture. Her gazes widen using fury, unable to accept salvation from the one she despises. He remembers the history. Defeated by a hero, he understood his dominance over humans had ended. Regardless his slip, he believed in her power. She had been born for battle, the strongest of all. Fueled by scars and hatred, she trained to surpass him. Now, tougher than ever, she remained single to reject everything he had previously compelled upon her. Albatross coldly stated that emotions were irrelevant. Her power, he stated, was by his design. Stun covered her as his words stripped away her sense of identity. Recollections surfaced of her creation, shaped to be further monstrous. She had been altered beyond recognition by the one who stated command over her purpose. Still in childhood, her feelings were rejected. Treated like a tool, she was molded, lacking regard for her will or pain. Abruptly, a devastating blast burst from the jaws of a beast, piercing the quiet with raw destruction. Witnesses turned in alarm as the explosion tore throughout the country, marking the beginning of another chaotic clash. Ezekiel showed transformed and carrying the senseless bodies of Ruby and companions. The battlefield fell silent under her grim status. Recognition dawned as identities were confirmed. Doubt about the demon lord surfaced, prompting questions that had much remained. With trembling lips, Ezekiel explained the reality: the demon lord had died, choosing to pass on her full power in her last serve. Emotion warmed. Ruby, shocked and shaken, confronted the weight of what Ezekiel carried: not merely power, but pain. Tears welled up. This suffering, the scars, every made sense now. She eventually understood why she had been hurt. A monstrous beast roared, its mouth wide with fury,
As Ezekiel remained calm and unflinching, her gazes destroying behind a cracked mask, lacking delay, she unleashed her anger, blaming the chaos on the careless fools who had caused it all. Her tone thundered with grief. She criticized her creators, announcing they were the reason for her suffering and the existence of isolation she had endured. The battlefield shook as her devastating assault obliterated the huge beast, making the ground shattered beneath its massive form. In awe, the companions observed. A lofty titan had fallen, brought down by her overwhelming might. Ruby faced the war zone using grit, slamming her weapon into the ground as twisted beasts closed in. Not all threats had been eliminated. A fresh terror, the blood golem, appeared, and Ruby pressed her allies to flee while Ezekiel kept the beasts at bay. Overcome, she struggled to manage multiple enemies. A quick blow knocked her down, pain surging through her body. Regardless her injuries, Ruby shouted for the companions to escape. Her gazes blazed with resolve as she remained her ground. Bleeding and exhausted, she attacked anew, refusing to slip, still against a monstrous foe. An enormous tail crashed below, inches beyond Ruby, as Cornea leapt between her and the blow, shielding her from certain death. Cornea neared using peaceful disdain, scolding Ruby for her recklessness. She reminded her of the narrow escape from the fairy dragon's assault. Ruby, regaining her footing, stated justice. Ezekiel would be carried accountable, not allowed to die lacking, facing the repercussions of her actions. Merely then, Ezekiel struck with frightening power, tearing through her enemy in one brutal movement. Spectators observed in awe. With overwhelming force, she had ripped unaware one of the Hydra's heads, her genuine power revealed. Ezekiel lunged with unyielding fury, announcing her intent to tear unaware yet different head from the massive Hydra-like creature. But the monster countered using overwhelming force, sending her hurtling through the sky and crashing to the ground in pain. Far away, a fresh team neared the turmoil. Amidst the mountains trembling, they wondered if such madness was normal in this infamous danger zone. As they ventured ahead, they encountered odd people creatures resembling demons, walking upright and speaking fluently. One of them doubted the man's self, suggesting a connection to Ruby, making the team both puzzled and alarmed. Lloyd rushed ahead in stun upon learning that Ruby was now risking her existence to protect them all. His chest raced. The Ruby he previously knew had changed, fighting not for requests, but for someone else's sake. Suddenly, a powerful crystal structure appeared, shining with severe energy, revealing a massive presence. Beyond, within the radiant structure, remained a monstrous being, with demonic horns and holy wings. Its sheer form radiated power. Ezekiel understood in dismay. The beast's wings were draining enormous amounts of holy energy, enough to shatter the ground beneath them. The monstrous being rose with holy power, electricity like waves crackling from its wings. Shock gripped everyone as it towered over them. Using unstoppable force, it unleashed a devastating blast. The earth burst, light and rubble engulfing the battlefield in a blinding explosion. Ezekiel was thrown through the sky, battered and senseless. Ruby and the companions observed in horror as her body fell helplessly. Before they could react, the beast touched again. Its wings reared back for a different blow, and fear swept through the defenders. The ground shattered under its next assault. Even from distance, the sheer power left them silent, a terrifying display of unmatched power. Colossal monster loomed, finished Ruby as she struggled to rise, barely clinging to consciousness, whereas the ground trembled below her. Suddenly, Lloyd remained between her and the beast. A shining barrier grew from his rod as Ruby looked up, her expression shifting to hope. Blood trailed beyond his mouth, but he didn't. Again, down, with peaceful determination, he whispered her name, ready to protect her at all costs. Enormous explosion burst as Lloyd confronted the beast's assault, the blast engulfing him in smoke and shattering waves of force. Through the turmoil, the monster stayed. Twin heads appeared with renewed fury, unyielding and ready for more destruction. Lloyd assessed the problem, realizing the beast could pierce their defenses. Retreat would make them easier targets. As electricity split the heavens, the monstrous entity lunged downward in a daring push. Lloyd launched himself toward its core. The beast consumed him entirely. Ruby screamed as she realized Lloyd had infiltrated the fairy dragon's body,